Story 1. Parents always favored my golden child brother and disowned me for starting a business. Now my company is successful, my brother lost his job, and my parents want me to hire him. I, 29, male, was recently contacted by my parents, who have not been in touch with me for the past 5 years. They want me to help them out, or to be more precise, they want me to help my brother out. My brother, Craig, 31, male, has always been the golden child, so to speak. My parents never even bothered to hide it because he happened to be better than me in every aspect back then, especially academically. Something that my parents allowed me to forget because they kept reminding me that he was doing so much better than me at school and that I needed to buckle up if I wanted to be in the same league as my brother. He got into a great college and then, 5 years ago, he became the youngest vice president in the history of his company. He had been working there ever since he graduated and had been earning well enough for himself right from the beginning. But then, when he made history by becoming the youngest vice president at his company, his fancy corporate job became the standard to beat for me, and my parents could not stop rubbing it in my face. Honestly, though, I had no interest in being a 9-to-5 employee because I'm sure that life has its own perks, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that has been my goal ever since I had even learned the meaning of that word. 5 years ago, after having worked at several places and gaining some knowledge in the industry that I wanted to work in, I decided that I was finally going to start my own business. Modern and edgy car accessories that I would design myself. I had spent enough time on research and development and had a proper business model to go ahead with, so I thought I would speak to my parents about it first. Because, regardless of how they always acted with my brother, I had believed that they would want the best for me as well because, well, they were my parents after all. So I decided to tell them about it after they had thrown my brother a party to celebrate his new job. 2 days after that party, I approached them in person and told them about my plan. I expected them to have some sort of feedback, but instead, they just started laughing and said that I was trying to prank them because it was embarrassing that after educating myself for so many years, this was my big idea for my future business. I told them I was serious about it, but they told me that they would advise me not to quit my job because they would be embarrassed to introduce their son as a failure since they knew that my business was doomed right from the beginning, as I was not capable enough. In comparison to my brother, they did not want me to fail so badly, so I had better just stick to the job that I already had. I was really offended, and I decided to argue with them and told them that I was going to go ahead with the business, with or without their support. They said that I was free to do whatever I wanted, but I was not free of the consequences. They told me that if I went ahead with the business idea that I had, they would be forced to cut me out of their life because I would be an embarrassment to them, and they already knew it. They also told me that they were sick of having to introduce their sons. One being the vice president at a prestigious company and the other still trying to figure his life out at the age of 25. So they had been thinking about having this discussion with me for quite some time anyway, and they finally told me that I could either continue working my way up at the job that I already had and not be an embarrassment to them, or I could go ahead and do whatever I wanted and make a fool out of myself, but then I would lose them. I think it's very obvious what I did. I chose to cut them out of my life and never spoke to them again after that, and I have also not been in touch since then because he obviously took our parents' side over mine, which I'm fine with. He was too arrogant anyway, so I did not want anything to do with him right from the beginning anyway. I had been working with cars for a really long time, and that is where I got my business idea from, so I had faith in it. I knew that this was something that people had wanted, so I decided to go in blindly and just prove my parents wrong. I quit my job and started working towards my goal. Now, I know that was a risky move, and I should not say it with such pride. I genuinely would not recommend it to anybody, but it actually worked out for me because within a few months, I had some investors on board, and I was able to start my own business. It was rough at first. I was basically living hand to mouth and relied only on word-of-mouth marketing getting to know about my business, and I got more and more customers. Then, after about 1.5 years, things started picking up pace and there was no looking back after that. Right now, I'm pretty comfortable. I have my own apartment, and it's pretty nice. I live in a great neighborhood. I have a nice car, and I honestly have everything that I had dreamt of in the beginning. I wouldn't say that I'm a millionaire, but I'm doing well enough for myself, and I definitely would not say that I have been a failure like my parents had expected me to. So I would say that I have managed to prove that wrong, and I'm really happy about it. I'm so happy about it that I don't even feel the need to have their face in it because it's not even worth it anyway. For the past 5 years, I have not been in touch with them. I even got married to my girlfriend of 8 years, and we have been married for 2 years. Last month, we found out that she was pregnant as well. I have had so many milestones, but I have never tried to contact my parents. They know where to find me. They can literally contact any relative and ask them where I live, so they can come visit me anyway. I know that they have known all about my life because I have kept in touch with the rest of our family, and they tell me that my parents ask about me pretty often but never try to get in touch with me. I guess that's their way of dealing with things. But anyway, last week they finally reached out to me and asked me if I would be willing to meet them. I discussed it with my wife, and she told me that she wanted me to go ahead and see what this was about. They hadn't mentioned anything in the message that they had sent me, so I didn't know what to expect, but I still went ahead and visited them at their house. Once I was there, they welcomed me pretty warmly, but I could sense that there was something going on. Even when I used to live with them, they had never been so nice to me, so even while they were making small talk with me, I knew that they were building up to something. Finally, they addressed the elephant in the room. They told me that they had heard how my business was doing and had invited me to congratulate me on it. They did not apologize or anything but said that they were glad that I had been able to prove them wrong and their initial skepticism was now completely gone. So that was nice, and I did not know what to say, so I just smiled. But then they went on to tell me that Craig had actually been pretty unlucky in the past couple of months. Apparently, his company had not been doing too well, and there had been mass layoffs, and even the upper management had been fired, and that included him. So for the past 4 months, he had just been sitting at home with nothing to do. My parents told me that he had been trying to look for another job, but after having worked in the same company for so long, he did not know what to do and was pretty depressed about the way things turned out for him. I thought it was really confusing that they were talking about him because there was not much that I could do, so I just let them go on because I wanted to see where they were taking this conversation. After some time, they finally got to the point and asked me if I would be willing to hire my brother because right now he was too depressed to apply to any jobs on his own, and all the offers that he was getting were below his pay grade, so he did need something. My parents wanted to contact me and asked me if I would be willing to give him a position in my company, something that paid well and he could also bring his own expertise to the table. When they asked me that question, I did not know what to say, so I told him that I needed some time to think about it, and I would let them know my answer later on. I did not say yes on purpose because I did not know how to respond to that. I should have known that they were not contacting me without any reason, since they had the opportunity to do so before but had never done it. They seemed pretty pleased with themselves. I think they expected me to say yes, but after having gone back home, I thought about it for a while, and after discussing it with my wife, I decided to decline. She works in a bank and doesn't have much to do with my company, but she told me that this was the professional arena and here whatever I said is what goes. So she did not want to meddle here. If I believed that I would not be able to work well with my brother, then that was what should be done, and either way, she did not think that my parents had been genuine in that attempt to reconcile with me, so I had no reason to do what they asked me. Anyway, I had not even agreed to help out, so I did not owe them to give him a job. I did not plan on letting them know about this because I knew that if I said no, they would take that opportunity and try to make me look like the bad guy. I tried to avoid any confrontation, but then they started texting me every day to ask me what my answer was, and I even ignored that. But then they finally called me 2 days back and told me that I had to give them an answer. So I told them that I had thought about it, and after a lot of deliberation, I had concluded that I could not work well with Craig, and I did not want him working with me. We had never had a good relationship, so I did not think that I owed it to him or even them to hire him, and they completely flipped out on me when I said that. They started screaming at me about everything that they had done for me, like raising me and paying for everything that I wanted when I was a child. Now, when they expected me to return the favor to them, I was turning my back on them and pretending like I did not owe them anything. I thought that it was a really unfair thing to say because they did all of that for me back because I literally depended on them, and I think it would be pretty illegal to just not do that for me. Besides, that was not even the point. So I tried to tell them that I just wouldn't be able to work well with Craig, and that was the only reason I did not want him in my company, so I did not think they needed to scream at me and act like that just because of this. Also, we have not been in touch for the past 5 years after they had told me that they did not have any faith in me, and they did not even invest in my business, so they had no right to expect that I would let them push me around. But they continued to scream at me and said that they had only contacted me because they felt like 5 years had passed and I would have finally let it go now that I was finally doing well. But instead, I was being petty and holding on to past grudges and refusing to help out my own family. They reminded me that Craig was my brother, and now that he was in trouble, I needed to be there for him, and even said that he would have done the same for me if I had been in his place. They told me that they would have supported me if my business had not worked out for me, and so I owed it to them to do the same for them. It got pretty confusing, and the argument got really heated, so after a while, I told them that I really did not want to speak to them anymore, and I hung up and blocked their numbers. Since then, I've been really confused about my feelings because of the things that my parents said about how they would have helped me out if I had been in Craig's place. I have spoken to my wife about it, and she says that they only said these things because I was not actually in his place, and they are trying to manipulate me, so I don't need to fall for any of that because they haven't even apologized to me yet and somehow still expect me to help him out. My brother had never been kind to me when we were kids, and everybody picked on me constantly, and I know she's right. But then I have this nagging feeling of guilt, and I don't know, I just feel really weird about everything. Am I the jerk for refusing to hire my brother after he lost his corporate job? Update 1. Thank you so much for responding to my post. It has been since I spoke to my parents last, and I know that what I did was not such a big deal. Honestly, it's not like my brother will never get a job again. It's just that I don't personally want to work with him. I had mentioned that I had spoken about it with my wife, and the two of us have decided to stick to our decision. But that's not sitting well with my parents. They have been going around making it sound like I'm jealous of my brother and had always been, which is why I was relishing the opportunity to do this to my family. I don't even understand why they are taking this too hard, since I know that they have been texting every single relative that we have about this. It's not even like these relatives are talking to them and they're just bringing it up. They're literally going out of their way to text them and tell them about me. It's just ridiculous the way they are acting, and I think it's a plea for attention, but I'm not going to give it to them. They have been blocked, and no matter what they do, I'm not unblocking them and speaking to them about this. Some of the relatives who have bothered to reach out to me and sent me the screenshots, I have responded to them and explained the entire situation. It's not like they did not know, because for the past 5 years my parents and I run into each other at family events and don't speak to each other. So most people were aware of our strained relationship. But this is taking things way too far, trying to directly involve them and make me look like the bad guy. Anyway, after I clarified things with some of my relatives, most of them told me that I did not need to worry about my parents. They were not going to turn against me since they were aware of whatever had happened in the past, and they know that my parents are just overreacting right now. So that's what I'm feeling good about right now. And honestly, my wife is pregnant, so I don't think I have time to worry about these things at the moment. I've been thinking about making the announcement in a couple of weeks, but I think I'm going to do it earlier just so my parents can take the hint and stop trying to bother me. I think it's a good idea, although we're not sure if it's going to work or not since my parents are pretty heartless. And they can even go and try to trouble us in spite of knowing that my wife is pregnant. I wouldn't put it past them, that's for sure. Update 2. Hello. So my wife and I made the pregnancy announcement on social media a couple of days ago. It's been about 10 days since my last conversation with my parents. Most of my family reached out to me to congratulate me, but then I received an email from an unknown sender that said that my child was going to suffer because of what I was doing to my family. I immediately knew that this was my parents. It had to be, because nobody else would even dream of saying something so horrendous. My baby is not even born yet, and they are already wishing ill upon us just because I said no to helping my brother out. It's not even like Craig had directly approached me for help, in which case I would have at least considered things, but it's my parents who want me to give him a job. Anyway, that's beside the point. If I had done some really evil things, I don't think it would have given them the license to say such things. I did not tell my wife about that email because it would just need to upset her, and I don't want that to happen. She's in the really early stages of her pregnancy, but nevertheless, it's still very disappointing to read things like these. I chose to deal with this on my own, and I went over to my parents' house to speak to them in person. I did not want to unblock them, so visiting them was the only way to speak to them, but they refused to even open up the door to let me in. Probably because they were aware that what they had done was really wrong. So I just spoke to them from outside their house, and I really lost my temper there. I yelled at them and said that they had no right to say such things, especially after the way they had behaved with me my entire childhood and the way they had been treating me for the past 5 years. Like I was not even part of the family. Just because I was moderately successful, now they wanted a piece of it and wanted to share my success with my brother as well, even though they had never forced Craig to do such things when I was struggling, and to be honest, they had not even been there for me when I was struggling. So they did not deserve to even speak to me at this point. I told them that whatever they were trying to do was not working because it was just alienating me from them even more. I also said that I never wanted to speak to them again, and even if they apologized, I was not going to forgive them in the future. So they could say goodbye to any help from me when they retired, and they will never get to see their grandchild either. After saying that, I left and came back home, and I feel really relieved now, to be honest. I had been holding these things back for quite some time, ever since they started bothering me, but now it was high time that I gave them a befitting response. I have not told my wife about this interaction yet because I don't want to upset her, and I don't think that I will until the pregnancy is done with. Update 3. Hi. So after I spoke to my parents last week in person, they decided to lay low for a while and not do anything. I also hosted a pregnancy announcement party at my house for some family members and close friends, and I had expected them to do something on that day, but they did not bother. So I thought that maybe they had finally moved on from this whole episode, and I was trying to do the same thing. But then this morning, I received a call from Craig while I was at work. That was really strange because he totally stopped speaking to us 5 years back, and I had no idea what he wanted to speak to me about. For a second, I thought he might try to talk to me along the same lines as my parents and demand that I give him a job, and I would have to go through the entire ordeal again. So I ignored his first call, but then he called me a few more times and even messaged me, saying that it was urgent and he needed to speak to me. He told me that I did not need to worry because he was not going to ask anything of me. He said that he just wanted to discuss something that had been bothering him for some time, so I decided to answer the call, and we spoke today. He said that he had been pretty depressed for the past few weeks, so he had not been speaking to anybody and had been ignoring all the messages and emails that he had been receiving, including the ones from his relatives. It was only a couple of days ago that he had finally checked those messages and realized that everybody is talking about how it was unfair for our parents to be demanding that I give him a job in my company, especially when they had never treated me well. Craig was really confused because he had been talking to our parents constantly for the past couple of weeks, but they had not said anything about such things going on in the family. He had spoken to our parents after he read those messages and asked them if they had done something of the sort, and they had outright declined it and said that they did not know what was being referred to in those messages. But he felt like they were lying to him, so he had called me instead to find out the truth because he had confided in our parents about his job situation and how upset he was. He had never even once said that he wanted my help, so he could not understand why they had chosen to enlist me and then try to force me to contact him and give him a job when he himself had not asked for it. So after giving it some thought, I decided to tell him the truth because I thought that he deserved to know exactly what our parents had been up to behind his back. I told him the entire story of whatever my parents had told me and said that after they had shared his story with me, they had told me that I needed to give him a job and help my family out because he was not in a good place right now and they did not want him to suffer. I told him that maybe their initial intention was to genuinely help him and support him to get his life back on track. But eventually, it just turned into harassing me, and I was not fine with that. I told Craig that I was really sorry about his job because I knew that it meant everything to him, and he had put in a lot of work at the company in his position, and it could not have been easy to be laid off like that. But honestly, he also knew that we never got along and would not work well together, which is why I declined my parents' request, and Craig seemed to understand. He told me that he was not interested in working with me. He did not mean it offensively, but he was just not in the right state right now to be working with anybody, and he was just taking a break on purpose. My parents had made it out like he had no offers that were worth considering, but he actually did, and he was just holding out on them because he wanted to take a break, and that was his personal choice. It was not that he was not upset, but his decision to not work for a while was not influenced by that. He seemed pretty frustrated, so he vented to me for a bit, and I let him because even though we were not on the best of terms anymore, I thought that he could do it anyway. After having a full conversation about this, he told me that he was very upset about what our parents had done regarding him because it made him seem desperate and it gave people the wrong idea about him, like he was trying to convince my parents to force me to get him a job, and it was just really confusing because he had not done anything of the sort. So he told me that he was going to speak to our parents about this, and he apologized to me for all that I had gone through. I thought it was really mature of him, and I really felt like he had grown up a lot in the past 5 years, especially after he got laid off from his job. I guess he got the idea that nothing was permanent and so he should not be so proud and arrogant. Maybe that was a lesson in disguise. But anyway, we were not exactly able to patch things up, but at least we had a good talk, and I think that's enough for me. Update 4. So a couple of days ago, Craig and I spoke to each other on the phone, and after our discussion, he said that he was going to speak to our parents and confront them about what they had done. So he did that, and it did not go too well because my parents got all defensive and said that they were just trying to help him out because they did not think that his position to take some time for himself was a good one, and he needed to get back into looking for a better job immediately. They ended up in a huge fight about it because Craig accused them of trying to control his life right from the beginning and never letting him make any decisions of his own, even when he was grown up. My parents obviously did not like that and started counting all the things that they had done for him, which were just normal things that parents usually do for their kids, and I don't know why they always feel that it's right to brag about it as they did as a favor. It was not a favor, you had to do it anyway. They got into a really bad fight, and now Craig is no longer speaking to them. Guess who they are blaming for all of that? Yep, you got it. They are blaming me for it all once again, and I just don't understand how I can become the scapegoat for literally every situation that they are in. This time there were no personal confrontations, and they just decided to go ahead and make a Facebook post about it. Lucky for me, though, all our relatives came to my rescue immediately and called my parents out on their BS. They reminded them that they had been terrible parents not just to me but also to Craig in a way because they kept trying to control him and put him under pressure, especially when he was going through such a difficult time. They should have been there for him morally and emotionally, support him, but instead, they were trying to put him down even more and make him seem like the bad guy. So after they received a lot of comments from our relatives, they decided to delete that post and block everybody from my family. To sum it up, pretty much everyone has ostracized them, and I'm really happy about it. Craig and he has apologized to me for treating me badly in the past, and we are going to try and build our relationship in the future. But right now, the most important thing in my life is my wife, and I'm really excited to be a father. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My girlfriend beat an armed intruder with an unloaded shotgun at 2 a.m., and she called a lawyer before the cops even arrived. Months later, she disappeared into the woods. The other night, I was sleeping over at my girlfriend's place. She lives in the middle of nowhere, practically. No streetlights, no sidewalks. Her house sits at the end of a long gravel driveway surrounded by dense trees. The nearest neighbor is a half-mile down the road, and you can't even see their porch light from her property. She keeps her house completely dark at night except for whatever room she's in. Says it attracts bats and keeps bugs away. I never questioned it before, just thought it was one of her quirky habits. It was around 2 a.m. when everything went to hell. I woke up to her shaking me hard, telling me to call 911 right damn now. My brain wasn't braining yet, but her voice had this edge I'd never heard before. While I fumbled for my phone, she was already moving. By the time I found it and dialed, she was out of the bedroom. I followed her voice, still trying to explain to the 911 operator what was happening when I didn't even know myself. Long story short, some guy had smashed through a window into the garage and was going through my car. I didn't even know what was happening until I stumbled out after her and saw the broken glass everywhere. The guy had a knife, not a small one either, one of those hunting knives with a serrated edge. My girlfriend had grabbed her shotgun from wherever she keeps it. I later found out it wasn't even loaded, which might have been worse because instead of shooting the bastard, she ended up using it like a goddamn baseball bat. This guy wasn't right in the head. Maybe drugs, maybe something else. There were bloody handprints on my car already when we got to the garage. When my girlfriend pointed the shotgun at him and told him to get out, he didn't run. He charged us. I still can't piece together exactly what happened next. It was dark and everything moved too fast. My girlfriend somehow tripped him. Or maybe he tripped himself. I don't know. Then she started using the stock of the shotgun on his rib cage. Not just hitting him, but methodically pressing down like she was trying to collapse his lungs. There was this horrible cracking sound. The guy was screaming. Blood everywhere. She didn't stop. I had to physically pull her off him. I grabbed her shoulders and yanked her backward. She didn't resist, just let me pull her away. Then she sat down on the floor, cross-legged, completely calm. Blood all over her. Her pajamas were soaked with it. Some of it was his, some was probably hers. I found out later she had cuts on her arms from the broken glass. She pulled out her phone and called a lawyer before the cops even showed up. Had the number saved in her contacts. Not 911. A lawyer. You have to understand something about my girlfriend. She's the person who stops her car to move turtles off the road. She catches spiders in cups and releases them outside instead of killing them. She's a practicing Buddhist. Nonviolence is a huge part of her identity. Before this, I would have described her as the gentlest person I know. She cries during animal rescue commercials. For Christ's sake. When the cops finally arrived, they were worse than useless. They barely looked at the broken window. They kept asking me questions like I was the criminal. They actually tried to handcuff me until my girlfriend stepped in. Her voice was ice cold when she told them they were making a mistake. She mentioned her lawyers and they backed off. The guy was still on the floor moaning and they tried to just throw him in the back of a police car. My girlfriend had to demand they call an ambulance. He needs medical attention, she told them. The cops acted like it was a massive inconvenience. The cops also gave us hell about confronting him. You're fucking idiots, they said. Never confront a burglar. Easy for them to say when they showed up almost 40 minutes later. What were we supposed to do? Hide in a corner while he took whatever he wanted? What if he decided to come into the house next? We were supposed to just wait and see? The guy is still in the hospital. No charges against my girlfriend yet. The lawyer she called has been helpful, walking us through everything step by step. Says it was clear self-defense, especially with the broken window and the knife. Says we shouldn't worry about legal consequences, but cautions us against talking to anyone about what happened without consulting him first. Every time I close my eyes, I see my girlfriend covered in blood holding that shotgun. I can't stop my heart from racing. I haven't slept more than an hour at a stretch since it happened. I keep checking the locks on the doors and windows, even though we've already changed them all. Every small noise makes me jump. My girlfriend suggested I might be experiencing some kind of trauma response. She looked up therapists in the area for me and made an appointment. I'm staying at her place now. Haven't left her side. Made sure she's eating, taking the medications they gave her after she was exposed to the intruder's blood. She hasn't talked much about what happened, and I haven't pushed her. She's been spending more time meditating than usual. Sometimes I find her sitting in front of her small altar, eyes closed, completely still for hours. The garage window is boarded up now. We're waiting for a replacement. The car has been cleaned, but I still can't bring myself to drive it. My girlfriend offered to sell it and help me find another one if that would make me feel better. I might take her up on that. Someone at work suggested I see her differently now because she's violent or dangerous. That's bullshit. If anything, I see her as even more complex than I realized. She hasn't changed. I've gotten some flack from friends and family who think that as the man, I should have been the one to handle the situation. That's stuck in my head more than I'd like to admit. Got an emergency therapy appointment next week to talk through some of this. My girlfriend says gender roles are constructs designed to make people feel inadequate, and that anyone who thinks I should have protected her instead of the other way around is missing the point entirely. For those wondering about details I left out, I saw her stomp on the guy's crotch hard enough that I heard something rupture. She knew exactly what she was doing. The only thing I still can't wrap my head around is how calm she was afterward. While I was shaking and stumbling over my words with the cops, she was clear and focused. She knew exactly what to say and what not to say. It was like watching someone flip a switch from Buddha to warrior and back again. I don't think either of us will be the same after this. The locks are changed. New security system gets installed tomorrow. Update. 8 months later. 8 months ago, I posted about my girlfriend, who I'll call Diana to make this easier to write, beating the hell out of a home intruder with an unloaded shotgun. A lot has happened since then, so I figured I'd give an update for those who are interested. First, about the intruder. He was a man in his 60s from a nearby town with a long history of drug problems, jail time, and mental health issues. We found out that about 2 months after my original post, he died in the hospital. His sister reached out to us, insisting she didn't blame Diana for what happened. She told us the doctors said he probably didn't have much longer anyway due to his overall health. Diana's face during the conversation made it clear she wasn't convinced that was the whole truth, but the sister seemed genuine. The meeting with his sister was Diana's idea. I was against it initially, worried the family might be looking to gather information for a lawsuit. The lawyer advised against it too, but Diana insisted. "I need to face the consequences of my actions," she said. So we met at a neutral location. The sister brought photos of the guy from better times. He'd been a carpenter once before the drugs took over. Had kids who wouldn't speak to him anymore. A life that had gradually unraveled. Diana listened to every word, asked thoughtful questions, and apologized for her role in his death. Even though it was self-defense, I watched the sister's face shift from guarded to understanding over the course of 2 hours. By the end, they hugged. I couldn't have done what Diana did that day, facing the family of someone whose death she caused. The aftermath hit Diana harder than I initially realized. About 3 months after the incident, she planned a solo trip to a national park during a week she knew I couldn't get time off work. She packed up and left, promising to check in regularly. The check-ins became less frequent, then stopped entirely after a few days. When I finally got through to her on the phone, something wasn't right. She was talking about needing to stay in the woods, about learning something essential that she couldn't leave behind. When I asked how long this learning might take, she said, "Some people take a lifetime." Then she started talking about being too attached to me, to her house, to her pets, about how materialistic her life had become, how she needed to strip everything away and start over. Her words made a certain kind of sense, but her tone was off, drifting and disconnected. I remembered her mentioning once that she takes medication for seizures that can cause symptoms similar to psychosis if she misses doses. I asked if she had her medication with her. The long pause told me everything I needed to know. When she finally answered, she said, "I don't need them anymore. I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years." I called her doctor, who confirmed that abruptly stopping her medication could cause serious problems. But I had no idea where exactly in this massive national park she was staying. She'd mentioned a specific trail when she first arrived, but that had been days ago. In desperation, I drove to her Buddhist temple. I'd only been there a couple times before, but I knew it was important to her. I explained the situation to the first person I found there. Within an hour, I was sitting with one of the monks. He listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and then did something I never expected. He offered to drive the 6 hours to the park with me to find her. We left immediately. On the drive, the monk explained that Diana had been coming to the temple for years, even before we met. He told me about her dedication to the practice, how she'd struggled with the nonviolence precept due to her past. He didn't elaborate on what her past meant, and I didn't press. It wasn't the time to dig into that particular mystery. We spent 2 days searching before we found her campsite. She was physically okay, but clearly not thinking straight. Her tent was set up at the base of a cliff. She'd lost weight, her clothes were filthy, and she'd been writing in a journal that was filled with circles and symbols rather than words. She recognized us, but seemed confused about why we were there. The monk spoke with her privately for over an hour. I don't know what was said, but afterward she agreed to take the emergency medication I'd brought and come home with us. The drive back was quiet. The monk sat in the back seat, chanting softly. Diana slept most of the way, her head against the window. When we got back to her place, the monk helped me get her inside, made sure she took another dose of her medication, and then left with a promise to check on her the next day. It took about a week for Diana to fully come back to herself. When she did, we had a long talk about everything. She admitted that she'd been struggling with what happened during the break-in more than she'd let on. Causing someone's death, even indirectly and in self-defense, had hit her heart, especially as someone who followed the first Buddhist precept of not harming any living being. She told me that going off into the woods without her medication had been a form of self-punishment. She wanted to suffer like she believed she'd made the intruder suffer. The logic wasn't sound, but trauma doesn't follow logical patterns. She also revealed something I hadn't known before. She'd been trained in martial arts as a teenager. Her parents had insisted after something happened that she still wasn't ready to talk about. That explained the precision of her movements during the confrontation, the muscle memory that had kicked in despite years of nonviolent practice. We immediately stepped up our approach to dealing with all this. We were already doing couples counseling every few months. Both of us are children of divorce and wanted to be proactive, but we increased that to weekly sessions. Diana also started seeing an individual therapist who specializes in trauma and understands Buddhist principles, which was important to her. We also completely overhauled the security at her place. I convinced her to adopt another dog, a big one this time. The puppy's already 75 pounds and still growing. Some kind of shepherd mix with paws the size of my fist. Diana named him Bod after the Bodhi tree. A lot of people who commented on my original post suggested we should get married. That's not going to happen, at least not legally. Neither of us has ever been interested in marriage as a legal institution, but we did buy each other rings as a symbol of commitment. Having that physical reminder on my finger helps, especially on days when work keeps us apart. We're planning a small commitment ceremony for next fall. Nothing legally binding, just a celebration with the people who matter most to us. The nightmares have mostly stopped. I still have them occasionally. Images of blood and broken glass, the sound of bones cracking. Diana still has moments where she gets very quiet, staring off into nothing. I still flinch at unexpected noises, but we're working through it together. The couples counselor says we're handling things better than most couples would in similar circumstances. One thing that's changed is how open Diana is about her seizure condition. Before, she barely mentioned it to anyone. Now, she makes sure at least 3 people always know where her medication is and what to do if she forgets to take it. We've had some conversations about her past that I doubt would have happened without this incident. She's told me bits and pieces about growing up in a household where her father had a temper, where she learned early that being small and female didn't mean you had to be helpless. How her Buddhist practice had been partly an attempt to counterbalance the anger she'd inherited from him. "I'm more like him than I want to be," she said one night. "That's what scares me about what happened." I showed Diana my original post and all the comments. She laughed at some parts, nodded seriously at others. When she got to the comments calling her a badass, she rolled her eyes but couldn't hide a small smile. She gave me permission to post this update as long as I kept us anonymous and wasn't an asshole online. For those who asked about legal stuff, we've both updated our wills and made each other medical power of attorney. The lawyer Diana called that night has become a friend of sorts, checking in periodically to make sure everything's still okay legally. He's helped us navigate the insurance claims for the property damage and medical costs, and connected us with resources we wouldn't have known about otherwise. I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're okay. Different, but okay. And for now, that's enough. Additional information and clarifications about Diana's condition. I should clarify about Diana's episode in the woods. It wasn't a mental breakdown. She has temporal lobe epilepsy that she's managed with medication since her teens. When she forgets or intentionally skips her medication, the seizures can manifest as what looks like psychosis or magical thinking. The neurologist explained that temporal lobe seizures specifically can cause religious experiences, feelings of profound insight, or the sense that the universe is sending personal messages. Diana has described it as feeling like she's receiving transmissions from beyond. When an episode hits, her thinking becomes circular. She sees patterns and connections everywhere, and ordinary objects seem imbued with special significance. This is why she became convinced she needed to stay in the forest during the seizure state. She genuinely believed the trees were communicating essential wisdom to her. She's fully acknowledged that going off without her medication was essentially a form of self-harm. Getting her to agree to individual therapy was a huge step. She's always resisted it before, arguing that her Buddhist practice provided all the mental health support she needed. Both of us struggle with asking for help. About Diana's Buddhist perspective. Diana explained to me why she couldn't allow herself to feel relief or satisfaction about the intruder's death, even though part of me did. In her belief system, everyone needs a chance to learn to be better. Killing someone, even in self-defense, strips them of that chance in this lifetime and forces them to start over. Since memories don't follow you between lives, according to what she believes, wherever that guy is now, he's still suffering the consequences of his choices, which leads to more bad choices, and the cycle continues. The first precept in Buddhism is not to kill any living being. Diana had managed to follow this strictly for over a decade, not even killing insects in her home. Breaking this precept, even in self-defense, shook the foundation of her practice. Her teacher at the temple has been working with her on understanding the nuance of the precepts, that they're training principles, not absolute commandments, and that intention matters. Additional details about the original incident. Some people have suggested I felt emasculated by the situation. There's probably some truth to that. I don't necessarily think I should have been the one to handle it because I'm the man, but I've heard that from friends and family enough times now that it's gotten under my skin. That's part of what I'm discussing in therapy. My father was particularly blunt about it. You let your girlfriend fight your battles? As if her being capable somehow diminishes me. That mindset is still common where I grew up. The police response was abysmal. They took 37 minutes to arrive. When they finally showed up, they spent more time lecturing us about confronting the intruder than actually investigating. One officer straight up told us we should have hidden in a bedroom and waited. Diana later mentioned she's had issues with this police department before. It's a tiny town with minimal crime, so the cops seemed annoyed they had to do actual police work on the 4th of July. The truth is, they barely documented anything. Took a few photos, asked some basic questions, and then tried to leave without even checking if the intruder needed medical attention. The report they filed was so sparse that our insurance company had trouble processing our claim. Diana's lawyer had to step in and demand a more thorough investigation. Even then, it was clear they just wanted the whole thing to go away. About the shotgun, Diana only told me afterward that it wasn't loaded. She keeps it unloaded for safety, but accessible enough to grab quickly. She knows how to use it. Her father taught her when she was younger, but says she's never fired it at anything living. I expected her to shoot the guy, not use it as a blunt weapon. Still effective, just not in the way I anticipated. Legal and practical matters. We've already taken care of our wills and are working on getting medical power of attorney established for each other. The legal matters related to the break-in are finally settled. No charges, no civil suits from the intruder's family. The case is officially closed. The district attorney reviewed everything and determined it was clearly self-defense. Diana's lawyer says this is the best possible outcome, though he warned us that the intruder's family could still file a civil suit within a certain time frame. So far, they haven't. The big dog was my idea. Diana was hesitant at first since she already had one small dog, but they've bonded quickly. The puppy is already fiercely protective of Diana. He sleeps at the foot of the bed, positioned between us and the door. We've enrolled him in training classes to make sure his protective instincts are properly channeled, but it's reassuring to have him there. Diana says his presence has helped reduce her hypervigilance at night. We've also established connections with neighbors who live about a half-mile down the road. We check in with each other if anything seems off. Rural communities have their own ways of looking out for each other. One neighbor is a retired sheriff's deputy who's been especially helpful, advising us on security measures and offering to drive by if we're ever concerned about something. About the intruder, we learned more details from both his sister and the police report. He'd been in and out of treatment programs for decades. Started with alcohol in his teens, moved to harder drugs in his 20s. By the time he broke into Diana's place, he was in his 60s and had spent nearly half his life either incarcerated or institutionalized. The police report showed multiple prior arrests for breaking and entering, usually targeting isolated rural properties. That night, he'd already attempted to break into another house about 5 miles away, but was scared off by their security system. The hospital found meth, fentanyl, and alcohol in his system. The doctors told his sister that the combination of drugs, his existing heart condition, and the injuries from the confrontation all contributed to his death 2 months later. Apparently, he never fully recovered from the punctured lung and other internal injuries. An infection set in eventually, and his system was too compromised to fight it off. His sister shared that he'd had periods of stability throughout his life, times when he'd get clean, find work, reconnect with family, but they never lasted. She described it as watching someone slowly disappear over decades, coming back briefly only to vanish again. Diana found some peace in learning about his life. He wasn't just the man who broke into our home, she told me afterward. He was someone's brother, someone's father. He mattered to people. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Husband cheating while I was pregnant, then took our newborn baby without permission to meet his girlfriend. So I called the cops and now they're both in legal trouble. I was married to my ex-husband, Alan, up until just 4 months ago. He and I broke up after I caught him red-handed with his mistress. At the time, I was pregnant, and I had been staying at my mother's house for about a week. I decided to surprise Alan by coming back home early. I had planned to cook him a nice breakfast before he went off to work, hoping to do something special for him since he had been telling me how much he missed me. But when I arrived home, I found him in bed, not alone, but with another woman. Of course, I screamed and yelled, probably waking up half the neighborhood in the process. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Alan, in a panic, kept apologizing to me, trying to explain himself. But instead of taking responsibility for what he had done, he actually tried to turn the situation around, telling me that I shouldn't have come home so early and that I should have called him first before showing up. It was as though he was basically blaming me for catching him in the act. I was beyond furious and heartbroken, and I demanded to know who the woman was. But Alan kept avoiding the question. He insisted it didn't matter and tried to deflect, saying that we could talk about it later. But at that moment, there was no later. The woman had absolutely no remorse on her face, and it was clear from the expression she wore that this wasn't the first time she had been in my home. Her demeanor was cold and unfazed, as if she had no care in the world about what was happening. When I asked her if she and my husband were having an affair, she didn't hesitate to coldly nod, acknowledging what she had done without any shame. Alan, on the other hand, yelled at me to ignore her, claiming he was going to explain everything to me later. The woman then scoffed at him and began putting her clothes back on. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. She was wearing my red night dress. I was taken aback. What kind of woman wore someone else's clothes while sleeping with their husband? I screamed at her to take off my night dress, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. I asked her what the hell she thought she was doing wearing my clothes after sleeping with my husband. The thought of it made my blood boil. She casually said she had nothing to wear for the night, so she had gone through my closet and picked out what she wanted. And then, with a nasty smirk, she added, "It's not like you can fit into these anymore," as she pointed at my pregnant belly. At that moment, I saw red. Who the hell did this woman think she was, coming into my home, sleeping with my husband, and then having the audacity to wear my clothes? Without even thinking, I lost all control and lunged at her, grabbing her hair and yanking it as hard as I could. She screamed in pain, thrashing around, but I was taller and stronger than her, so she couldn't break free. I swear, if I hadn't been pregnant, I would have taken her down to the floor and given her a good beating, but I didn't want to put my baby at risk. The woman continued to try and fight back until Alan quickly intervened, pulling her away from me. Then the woman, her face still full of defiance, shouted at Alan that she was going to kill me for touching her hair and demanded that he stand up for her if he ever wanted to see her again. Her voice had a certain authority. She spoke to Alan as if she was his partner, as if she had every right to control him. This is when I started to realize that she wasn't just some random woman to him. This wasn't a one-night stand. Both of them clearly knew each other quite well. She was talking to him like his girlfriend. Alan, surprisingly, turned on me. He began to scold me for slapping her, telling me I needed to calm down and act more rationally. Couldn't believe it. Here he was, the one who had betrayed me, turning things around to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. I asked him to tell me exactly who she was and what was happening between them. This is when Alan began to tell me that over the months since I had become pregnant, he had felt less and less attracted to me. He explained that as his feelings for me faded, he met Lila, the woman I had caught him with, and that she had been able to satisfy him in ways I never could. Hearing his words, I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. All those months, all that love I thought we shared, meant nothing to him anymore. And then he went on to say that what had started off as just hookups between him and Lila had now turned into something serious. Alan casually told me he had been planning to talk to me about it, but since I was pregnant, he wanted to wait until after I gave birth. He wanted to spare me the pain, he said, as if that was some kind of favor. He had already made his choice to leave me. I couldn't believe the betrayal. While I was pregnant and carrying his child inside me, the father of my baby was out having fun with another woman. Over the 4 years of our marriage, I had supported Alan through everything. His career, his dreams, his struggles, and for what? For him to turn around and stab me in the back like this? The anger and hurt inside me were overwhelming. It felt like all the love I had given, all the sacrifices I had made, meant nothing to him. I told Alan there was no reason to wait until after the baby was born to divorce me. If he was already so sure he didn't love me anymore, then what was the point of staying married? Why drag it out? His excuses didn't matter to me anymore. Alan tried to argue that we could talk about it later, but I was done listening. The pain of everything he had done was too much, and my frustration boiled over. I told him in no uncertain terms that he needed to pack up his things and leave my house, and take his mistress with him. The audacity of him coming into my home and bringing the woman into my bed was beyond anything I could tolerate. Even if he didn't feel attracted to me anymore, how dare he disrespect me like this? Alan was visibly taken aback. He never expected me to take such a firm stand and tried to argue back. But I wasn't going to back down. I told him that if he didn't leave, I would call the police on him. I wasn't going to let him stay in my house a moment longer. Eventually, my ex-husband begrudgingly agreed and started to pack up his things. As they were leaving, Lila had the audacity to taunt me. She mocked me, saying everything Alan had told her about me over the months was true, that I was a cold and calculating woman. She went on cruelly saying that this was why no man could ever stay with me. Her words stung deeply, and it felt like she was rubbing salt into a wound that I didn't think could hurt anymore. To make matters worse, Alan didn't say a word to defend me. They both left without a single word of apology or remorse, and as soon as the door closed behind them, I broke down. The weight of the betrayal, the hurt, and the loss overwhelmed me, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I cried like I had never cried before. But in the midst of that pain, a part of me knew I couldn't let them break me. After all, I had been raised by a single mother, and she had taught me to be strong and to stand up for myself no matter what. So despite how broken I felt, I picked myself up. I wasn't going to let Alan or anyone else take away my sense of self-worth. Over the next few weeks, I reached out to a lawyer, got advice, and filed for divorce. Thankfully, I had been smart enough to have Alan sign a prenup before we got married, which meant our divorce proceedings would be much faster and simpler. Since I was in a far better financial position than he was, I knew this wouldn't be a long battle. The one thing we needed to settle was custody of our child. As the mother, I was granted primary custody of our newborn. I would raise my child, and Alan would have supervised visitation at least until our child was older, and then maybe we could change the custody arrangements again. I couldn't trust him to be alone with the baby after everything that had happened, and the lawyer made it clear that it was in the best interest of the child, especially given the circumstances. In the end, we both agreed on this. Now, 4 days ago, I finally gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. The experience was overwhelming, but I had my mom with me the whole time. It was a relief to have her there, as I needed all the comfort I could get throughout the entire birthing process. I was still at the hospital recovering when Alan came to visit me and our baby the next day. Surprisingly, he seemed genuinely proud to be a father. Despite all the anger I felt toward him, I wanted us to at least try to be good co-parents for the sake of our child. Our son was the one thing that mattered now. After a little while, my mom decided to head back home to freshen up. She had been awake with me for what felt like hours, and I could tell she needed rest. I too was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and I really wanted to get some sleep. Alan assured me he would stay in the room and watch over our son while I rested. I told him to wake me up if our son cried, as he would probably need to be fed, and Alan promised me he would. So, imagine the sheer panic I felt when I woke up 3 hours later to my mother frantically asking me, Where's your baby? I was disoriented and confused as I tried to gather my thoughts. We looked around the hospital room, but my baby and Alan were nowhere to be found. My heart started racing, and I could feel the adrenaline pumping as I realized something was terribly wrong. I immediately asked the nurses if they had seen Alan or my son, and one of them finally told me, to my horror, that she had seen Alan walking out of the hospital with my baby. The moment those words hit me, I was frozen in disbelief. Alan had no right to leave with my child without my permission, especially after he had promised me he would stay and watch over him. My mind was reeling, and I could barely process what was happening. I grabbed my phone and started calling him frantically, but he didn't pick up. Each unanswered call only made my anxiety worse. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I was on the verge of having a panic attack. Where did Alan take him? What if my son woke up hungry? What would he eat? Was Alan planning to disappear with him, to take my baby away from me? All kinds of disturbing questions flooded my mind, each one more terrifying than the last. All I could think about was my baby and whether he was okay. After almost multiple missed calls, Alan finally picked up, or so I thought. But to my shock, it wasn't Alan's voice on the other end. It was Lila. She calmly informed me that my baby was with her and that Alan had brought him back to their place to show off our newborn to her, since I had not allowed her to visit me at the hospital. This was true. Alan had asked me if he could bring Lila with him, and I had refused since I didn't want to see her. I asked her how my son was and to give the phone to Alan so I could give him a piece of my mind about leaving with my child without permission. Lila then told me that my son had woken up shortly after Alan had taken him there and was crying, clearly hungry. So Alan had hurried to a grocery store to buy some formula so they could feed him. She then added that Alan had left his phone behind by mistake, which is why I had to wait if I wanted to talk to him. I was absolutely taken aback. My son had woken up hungry, crying, and she wanted me to wait? Also, what right did they have to give my son formula when I, as his mother, hadn't agreed to that? I immediately demanded that she drive back to the hospital and return my son back to me so I could feed him. But Lila argued that she and Alan knew what they were doing, claiming that they were going to be my son's parents now, along with me, and that they knew what was best for him. Also, she said that I needed to stop freaking out and that after they fed him, Alan would bring the baby back to me. Her tone was so cold, so dismissive, that she sounded like a deranged psycho who was trying to justify keeping my hungry infant child away from me. I continued to urge her to bring my son back, but she kept saying how she and Alan had read parenting books, so they were prepared to handle my child without me. Her words only fueled my fury. At that moment, I knew I had to act fast. Without hesitation, I cut the call with Lila and immediately dialed the police. I told them that my ex-husband had kidnapped my newborn son and left him with a stranger. My heart was racing as I explained how terrified I was for my baby's safety, especially since I had just given birth a day ago. The fear that something could happen to him, that he might be hurt or scared without me, consumed me. I needed to make sure he was returned to me safely. The police responded quickly, and within an hour, Alan and Lila were arrested for kidnapping and endangering my child. Soon after, they brought my son back to the hospital. I rushed to change him and feed him, and while he seemed fine physically, I could tell he had been crying for hours. His little face was red, and the sight of it broke my heart. The whole situation was a nightmare, but I was glad that at least my baby was back where he belongs, with me. Since then, my ex and Lila have been out on bail, but they're facing charges and will have to appear in court soon. I made it clear that I wasn't dropping the charges, and I wanted to see them punished for what they did. This wasn't something I could just overlook. My baby's safety was at stake, and they needed to answer for what they had done. At first, Alan was adamant that he hadn't done anything wrong, that I was overreacting and that I shouldn't have called the police on them. He tried to defend himself, claiming that he was just trying to show off our son, but it was obvious that he had no sense of how serious the situation was. He thought he could just walk away without facing consequences. However, I guess after talking to a lawyer, Alan's tune has changed. Now he's asking me to reconsider the charges, claiming that he's facing jail time and begging for me to forgive him. Update 1. To everyone asking why Alan and Lila would do something like this, I am just as stunned as all of you. When we got divorced, I thought we could at least manage to be supportive co-parents for the sake of our son. But what Alan has done goes far beyond crossing any line. It's unforgivable. He had no right to just take my baby and leave, especially when he didn't even have primary custody. The fact that he would take my son without informing me or considering how it would affect me or the baby shows a complete lack of respect for me as his mother. Also, it's not just about custody, it's about basic decency and responsibility as a parent. He doesn't get to make decisions like this without consulting me, especially when it involves our one-day newborn son. I've seen some comments asking why I called the cops, and honestly, it makes me think that some of you don't fully understand what it means to be a parent, especially a mother. Any parent who has a child, especially a newborn, knows you can't just separate a baby from their mother right after birth. Newborns need constant care. They need to be fed, changed, and held. It's not just about a few hours. They need care 24/7. When my son returned to me, he was crying. His diaper hadn't been changed, and he was hungry. It broke my heart to see him in that state. No one, especially not Alan and Lila, has the right to put my baby in that situation. As a mother, I had to do what was necessary to protect my child and make sure he was safe. The police were the only way to ensure that he was returned to me immediately. How could my ex and Lila just unilaterally decide to buy and feed my newborn formula without even discussing it with me? That decision wasn't theirs to make, especially not the mother's. It's completely outrageous. More importantly, how could my ex leave my baby with someone I don't even know properly? Someone I only know because I found her sleeping with him. What if something had happened to my baby while he was with her? What if she had done something to harm him? How could he be so reckless, so careless? The thought alone terrifies me. I don't regret calling the cops, not for a second. What they did was wrong, and I'm not going to just let it go. I'm so thankful that my baby is back with me and that he's okay, but I'm going to make sure Alan and Lila are held accountable for what they did. My priority is my son, and I will do everything in my power to protect him forever, even if it means making tough decisions. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update. I'm relieved to say that my baby and I are doing fine now. We're back home, and my mom is staying with us to help out. I've also made sure to set up cameras everywhere, just in case. I'm not taking any chances with my son's safety after everything that's happened. As for my ex, he has been begging me for mercy, trying to get me to reconsider the charges. He's apparently scared of facing jail time, but I have been ignoring him. So the other day, he tried to come over to my place and talk to me forcefully. When he showed up unannounced, looking all flustered and desperate, I didn't let him come in. Instead, I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. My son was asleep inside, and I wasn't about to let this man wake him up. Alan basically told me how, as the father of my child, he had every right to take our son wherever he wanted, and that he wanted me to stop acting like the scorned ex-wife and just let everything go. He wanted me to drop the charges immediately and try to talk with the cops about how it was all just a big misunderstanding. His audacity was truly unbelievable. I told him that I wasn't going to do anything like that when it wasn't true. Then, with complete disregard for everything I'd been through, everything we had gone through, he told me that this was apparently the reason he'd fallen out of love with me in the first place. He looked me dead in the eye and said with a patronizing tone, "This whole situation, how you have acted, it's exactly why I couldn't be with you anymore. You're so controlling, so rigid. This is why I cheated. You're so impossible to deal with. No wonder things fell apart between us. You suffocate everything you touch." I was taken aback by his choice of words. Before I could react, he continued to yell at me, "Do you really think you are the only parent here? This is my son too, and I deserve your respect. You had no right to call the cops and get me arrested." To him, it seemed like the entire situation was my fault. I was the one who had pushed him to cheat. I was the one who had made him fall out of love. I was the one who had made him feel trapped. He seemed completely oblivious to the gravity of what he had done and seemed to think that just because he was the father, he could do whatever he wanted with no consequences. I took a breath, standing firm as I looked him dead in the eyes and told him that his manipulation wasn't going to work on me anymore. I wasn't some naive woman he could walk all over like before. You don't get to stand there and tell me why you fell out of love with me. You cheated, you lied, and you're the one who destroyed everything. I am glad we got a divorce and I don't care about you anymore. But this isn't about us, it's about my son. You took him to see your girlfriend just one day after he was born while I was still recovering at the hospital. You and I both know you had no right to do that. Now you think I'm supposed to just let go? I don't care if you're scared of jail time, because I'm not going to drop the charges. His jaw clenched, and I could tell he was trying to come up with something to say, but I cut him off. You don't get to play the victim anymore, Alan. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. You think you're entitled to mercy because you share DNA with my son? Let me remind you that being a father is about actions, not biology. And your actions have done nothing but prove how unfit and immature you are to make any decisions for him. I will make sure the court punishes you for this. I then shut the door on his face while he continued to shout from the other end. He crossed a line and I'm not backing down. As for Lila, she has continued to send me the nastiest, most unhinged messages since that day. It's as though she's made it her personal mission to harass me at every turn. Every time I think she can't stoop any lower, she surprises me. The audacity of that woman knows no bounds. She has written to me saying that she was looking forward to becoming my son's new mommy, but that I ruined her chance out of sheer jealousy because I got her arrested. She then told me how she wished for me and my son to die in a car accident and that we didn't deserve to live. I was stunned reading that message. It was beyond disgusting. What kind of person wishes death on someone, especially a mother and her child? She is utterly vile and disrespectful. I've shown all of Lila's vile messages to my lawyer, and we are taking immediate action. We are planning to get a restraining order against Lila as soon as possible. Given how threatening and malicious her messages have been, we feel it's necessary to ensure that she stays away from me and my baby forever. Update 3. It's been a month and a half since my last update. The day of the court hearing finally arrived yesterday. Both Alan and Lila had their lawyers with them, of course, trying to downplay what had happened and avoid taking any responsibility. Alan's defense was filled with excuses. He tried to claim that he was just trying to be a good father by taking the baby to Lila since I was asleep, and that he was going to return the baby to me later that day. He said it was basically my fault for not allowing him to bring Lila with him to visit our son. Apparently, he never meant to cause any harm and claimed that I freaked out due to my hormones and called the cops for no reason. But regardless of his words, the reality of the situation spoke for itself. He had taken my baby without permission, left him in the care of a woman whom I barely knew, and had basically ignored my rights as a mother. There was no excuse for what he had done. He begged the judge for some leniency. Lila, as expected, also didn't take any responsibility. She tried to act like she had every right to be involved with my son, as if she was now some kind of a stepmother. She claimed I had a grudge against her ever since she had won my husband for me, and that I was trying to make her life difficult unnecessarily. At this point, my lawyer stood in the courtroom and began to read out all of Lila's vile messages aloud, filled with cruelty and threats. It was necessary for the judge to understand the kind of person my ex's girlfriend really was and why she needed to stay far away from me and the baby. I could see the shock on the faces of those present. Clearly, Lila had no respect for me, for my son, or for our boundaries. After everything was presented, the messages, the timeline of events, the police reports, and the testimony from my side, the judge was clear in their ruling. Alan was found guilty of kidnapping and endangering the welfare of a child. Lila, too, was charged with contributing to the child's endangerment. In the end, Alan was given a sentence that involved 1-year probation and mandatory parenting classes. If he breaks the rules of his probation, he will face jail time. Lila was given a restraining order, and she was ordered to stay away from me and my family. The restraining order meant I wouldn't have to worry about Lila sending me any more hateful messages, and the court's decision reinforced that I, as a mother, had the final say in how my child is raised. Both of them were also required to pay restitution for the emotional distress they had caused to me and the baby. I could see both Alan and Lila seething with rage by the end of the court proceeding, but there was nothing that they could do anymore. They got what they deserved. Update 4. 6 months have passed since the court hearing, and life has slowly begun to feel more like normal again. My son, who I still can't believe is already 6 months old, has brought so much joy into my life. Every milestone he hits, his first smile, the first time he rolled over, and now he's almost sitting up on his own, makes everything worth it. I've been focusing on making sure he grows up in a stable, loving environment, surrounded by family and friends who truly care about him. My mom visits us as much as she can, and I'm so grateful for her support. She's been a huge help with everything, from taking care of my son during the night to offering emotional support when I needed it most. I honestly don't know how I would have done it without her. As for Alan and Lila, they've both been completely out of the picture. Alan did try to reach out once or twice, but I didn't respond. I'm done with him. I've made it clear that my son and I are moving forward without him, and that's exactly what we're doing. As for Lila, the restraining orders have worked, and I haven't had any direct contact with her since the court hearing. Honestly, there are still moments when I look back at everything that happened with Alan and Lila, and the anger and hurt creep back in. But I try not to let those emotions consume me. What matters now is my son and the life we're building together. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Aunt demanding my unborn baby. I, 24F, am currently 8 months pregnant with a baby girl, and my aunt/cousin have been giving me trouble since I announced the news. My partner and I already adore our girl and have no plans to give her up, but my aunt wants me to give up my child to my cousin who has been suffering from infertility for the past 5 years. For more context, my aunt has raised my sister and I as a motherly figure after our mother passed away when we were very young. We have been quite close with my aunt/cousin throughout our life and have been trying to support my cousin through her struggles with infertility. My aunt is also very religious, being a Mormon who regularly attends church and has a very rigid, close-minded view on morality, values, and living a good life. She believes that a child deserves a strong, foundational religious upbringing with a strong, providing father and a loving, attentive mother. Since my partner is not Christian and because we both have full-time jobs and careers, she believes that my child will grow up confused and misguided in our household due to our religious differences, lacking a proper sense of identity and adequate care. She says she fears that our child's well-being will not be put first in such an environment and that our kid could likely go down a dark, immoral path, according to her. My cousin, who works part-time from home, and her husband are way better able to provide my child with a loving home with good values and religion. I have both my aunt and cousin blocked on most forms of communication, and I have moved to a new home where they do not know the address. My partner and I also got married in a private ceremony, so they won't have control over my medical decisions. Out of the two, my aunt has been more aggressive towards me and even showed up to my old apartment one day to scream and argue with me about the situation. She, in a fake nice tone, tried to get me to come with her to a cafe near the church to speak with me about the baby, even when I told her there is nothing to be discussed and that I'm keeping the baby. I spoke with the apartment manager and had to hide until she left after half an hour. My aunt also has her church friends after me. They sometimes regularly send me hostile text messages and voicemails. My cousin has been on the quieter side towards me and has been struggling with depression and trauma from her latest pregnancy last year, ending in a stillbirth of her baby girl after preterm labor at 30 weeks. She has been regularly posting on social media and has joined motherhood-related groups. I've heard through gossip that she is trying to get a baby through those groups and has been banned from a considerable amount of them to her dismay. She had been harassing young moms and widows for their babies. My cousin is desperate for a baby to fix her family and is apparently waiting for me to give birth to my baby girl, who she apparently sees her own late baby in. My aunt and her are apparently sure that I will be overwhelmed with my decision and the responsibilities with motherhood, that I will give up/give more to my baby by letting my cousin and her husband adopt her. My aunt says that giving my baby to my cousin shouldn't be as hard as it could be because we are family and that I could have a baby later on, as I'm still young and have plans to attend grad school after working for a while. My cousin also apparently wants to get into contact, as we had before my pregnancy. I will not be speaking to her again until after I give birth to see where she is then and to prevent further stress during my pregnancy. I have been very supportive of her through her infertility journey and generally liked her more than my aunt growing up, but her behavior and thinking have shocked me and are making me fear for my safety. I am planning a big wedding party for next year since my partner and I privately got married this year, and I am not sure if my cousin/aunt would be invited and able to come. I have a lot of family support from both sides right now, apart from those who are close to them and on their side, but I'm not sure if support will be as strong in a year and what my relationship with my aunt/cousin will be then. I have skipped some family events that I know they will be at, but I don't want to miss out on those family gatherings and fun forever. I'm not sure how the future will look like with my aunt/cousin after my baby and the issues that arise with that. Any support would be appreciated. Update 1. This will be a small update. We got in contact with the local church leader and talked to them about the situation with my aunt and cousin, who are both active members. We talked to him for a while. He initially dismissed my concerns as personal conflict between family and tried to refer us over to counseling services. We explained to him that my cousin is dealing with trauma from her baby's death and that she is having false hopes about adopting my baby, which would be raised in a good home. We also told him that my aunt is feeding into those hopes and has been harassing me on her behalf, causing disturbance and a lot of stress. He told me he understood my side and that he knew what my cousin has been going through with her inability to have kids. He said he would contact my aunt and cousin to see what they have to say about the situation. I talked again with him today. He said that my aunt and cousin would like to speak with me and that they were concerned that I stopped communicating with them, especially since I moved away. I explained to him that their behavior regarding my baby influenced me to do those things and pressed him on what they said. He said that my cousin had talked with a church therapist and was looking into adoption to start a family because her IVF treatments were likely not going to produce a child with her condition. I emphasized to him that I was not giving up my baby and that my cousin had been thinking such. He said that understood that and started asking me for personal details on how I was doing now. He was again trying to set up a meeting between us and my aunt/cousin and referring us to services. I told him I was not comfortable with that at the moment, and he told me to at least call my cousin once. He said he will meet with my aunt on Sunday since I was too scared to do on my own. Our call ended after that. I'll comment any update on what he says in the coming days under this post. Edit 1. I am not satisfied with his response and do not like that he is putting pressure on me to reconnect with my aunt and cousin. He says he understands my concerns, but I think he is being rather dismissive of them and trying to force us to resolve our issues. My partner and I thought it was worth a shot reaching out to him because he has influence and religious authority over my aunt/cousin. I'll see what he says on the next phone call and see what I can do to make him care more. Edit 2. To make clear, I didn't give him any personal information and have no plans for any in-person meeting with my aunt and cousin. We are in contact with legal help. We do not live in Utah. Update 2. We spoke again with the bishop. He said that there isn't much he can personally do to resolve the situation within his capacity between me and my aunt/cousin, other than refer to counseling services. I asked him if he did meet with my aunt, and he said he did. Their conversation was apparently focused on my cousin and helping her heal. He told me my cousin was also grieving a loss of communication with me and my sister, who hasn't been talking much to her anymore. I told him that my cousin was trying to take my baby to replace hers, and that her and my aunt's behavior was threatening the safety and well-being of me and my family. I think he was losing interest in the conversation, so he just told me to do whatever I feel is best for my family, but to consider the grief my cousin has been through and contact family counseling services for further help on this matter. Me and my partner sent him an email afterwards with a copy to our lawyer to close off communication. I decided to unblock my cousin and send her a message. I told her that my partner and I are keeping our baby and that is not up for discussion. I encouraged her to seek proper therapy if she hasn't already done so and told her that I am not comfortable with her husband, or my aunt being involved in my child's life. She hasn't responded yet. Regardless of what she says, our relationship will not return to as it was before, and she will not be a part of my child's life. Update 3, November 25th, 2024. Here is the update everyone has been waiting for. I was busy in the few last months with the birth and projects I've been working on as I recover from birth and take care of my new baby. I logged into Reddit a few times since then, but haven't gotten a chance to update. I am 25 now and my baby is almost 4 months old. Time flies, She is doing well and brings us so much joy. I love going on walks with her and she is growing up so fast. I am planning to go back to work soon, looking for a new job. Thank you all for the concern and well wishes, and I hope everyone is having a great time during the Thanksgiving holiday season. Now the update that everyone is looking forward to, my cousin and aunt. Since my last update, my cousin and aunt went silent for a while, and my cousin didn't respond to my texts. In August, my aunt reached out to me through a new number and asked me how I was and if I had the baby yet. We talked. She was concerned about my baby's well-being since I distanced myself from a lot of my family and had to leave my job. I asked about my cousin. She says they have been trying to adopt a baby through their church connections, but nothing has been successful so far, because they probably just started on that. I asked about whether they consulted with a proper adoption agency, but my aunt said that my cousin's husband's past may become a problem. I didn't know about that, and she proceeded to rant about how the white birth rate is dropping and how people were actively denying themselves parenthood. She asked me if I still wanted the baby and got angry about 9-month abortions. She is pro-life without exceptions. I reaffirmed to her that I did, and she talked about how my cousin was getting old, but she is in her early 30s, and that her nest is still empty. She wanted me to at least share the joy and let my cousin be in my daughter's life and spend time with her. I told it would not be possible due to their past behavior. I feared that my cousin would try to become her mother and let her delusions get to her again. My aunt said that my cousin was trying to become better and got some church counseling. I still told her no. She then asked me if I knew anyone or any resources to adopt a baby. I told her I didn't and that my cousin/her husband should be careful and patient with trying to become parents. My aunt emphasized how becoming parents was important to my cousin and her husband because they deserve children at this point and for their reputation since everyone around them is reaching the parenthood milestone. She asked about my future family plans and pushed me on when I'm going to get pregnant again/of my next child. She told me family planning was important, especially after this surprise pregnancy, and asked if they could be involved next time. As the call went on, more and more of her past/usual behavior became apparent, and I was getting tired of it. I wanted to end the call, but she ended it first because she had some activity. Thankfully, I have my sister to keep me in the loop with what's happening with my aunt/cousin and other matters regarding my family and my old church. Everything my aunt said was apparently true about my cousin, according to my sister. My cousin's overall mental health seems to have improved from her worst, but she still has her deep depressive periods. She sometimes feels very empty with her lack of children and her worsened relationships with me and my sister. My cousin and her husband are also trying to find an IVF doctor abroad in hopes of a miracle since a lot of their options are shutting down here. My cousin apparently still views my baby as something she lost, but she believes God will give her kids soon and has been trying to get her sins forgiven. We are skipping Thanksgiving with my side of the family in a few days for obvious reasons. I am going back to the workforce soon, likely after all the holidays. I have my child care arrangements ready with all the necessary precautions, and the future is looking good overall. Again, thank you all for your support, and let me know if you have any questions about anything: Mormonism, my family, motherhood, etc. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My coworker begged me to be her man of honor, wouldn't take no for an answer, and gave me a list of wedding tasks. When I refused again, she said, "Every modern woman needs a bestie." This happened yesterday, and I'm still confused. Yesterday was my first day back to work after being off for 2 weeks. This is kind of important. One of my coworkers had gotten engaged the week before I left. When she announced it at work, we all did the congratulations and happy for her type of things. I thought it was over. When I left for vacation, the last I knew, no plans had been made yet. Then yesterday, when I went back to work, my boss Kim and best friend Laura said that coworker Claire was looking for me. I asked what was up, and they weren't sure, but she was carrying a little gift bag. A few minutes later, Claire found me and asked how my vacation was. I was telling her about it, and she cut me off and said she had a very important question to ask. She handed me a little gift bag and asked if I would be her best man of honor for her wedding. I thanked her and told her that typically this would traditionally go to a close female relationship. She responded that there was nothing additional about her wedding, so it was good. I looked over at Laura and Kim, who were both trying to keep from laughing. I again thanked her, congratulated her, and told her that I wasn't interested in being part of her wedding party and that I would be happier being a guest in the audience. I swear, when I said this, it was when we watched her entire demeanor change and a switch flipped. She went off, saying that I have to be in her wedding and that she doesn't understand why I would say no. I told her that we only knew each other for a short time and that I had no interest in trying to plan parties, dinners, and shopping trips. She told me I needed to think about it and she would get back to me later. I told her, "Go for it, but my answer will be the same." She walked away, and I looked at Kim and Laura and asked, "What the ever-loving, fresh, creepy hell was that?" Kim started to laugh and said she didn't know, but saying no like I did might have saved me a lot of headaches in the future. Laura made the comment that she went straight to Bridezilla, and this was a look into what she was going to be like. Claire came back today. However, she went with a different approach and handed me a list of what she wants me to do in her vision of how she sees things. I asked her why she gave me this, and she said that as her man of honor, these were my responsibilities. I told her again that I was not going to do any of this. She started again that she needs me to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Then she asked, "Haven't you ever wanted to be part of something special?" I told her, I was a nurse. Enter Kim, who could sense that I needed help, and told Claire one of her patients needed her help. I told Kim that if this keeps up, I might need her help. She said she was already watching it and would intervene if I needed it. What did I miss? We aren't that close. She just transferred down to my unit from a different unit 6 months ago. I had no idea who she was until that point. Laura is saying that she is close in age to me, and she might feel that to be enough of a connection. Did I miss something? When we are asked, are we supposed to automatically gush and jump up and down in excitement? Why is saying no a bad thing? Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. It seems Kim is useless here. You really need to go over Kim's head and nip this in the butt right now because Claire isn't taking no for an answer. OP. Kim will help. I know she will. She is just waiting to see what her next step is. I have had to have her help with a work issue before. If I have problems with her the next time we work together, then I'll let Kim loose. Comment 2. Could this be some weird way to flirt? It won't work with me. I like dick LOL and I have a boyfriend LOL. Comment 3. I'm not an expert, but isn't this an HR issue now? I mean, isn't that like harassment? OP. It becomes an issue if I report it. My boss is seeing all of it so far and has said that she is watching the situation and will intervene if it keeps going. I'm off tomorrow, so I won't see her for a couple of days. Comment 4. She wants to show off how different and edgy she is by having a man of honor. She may also admire your organizing skills and get it done demeanor, and thinks you'll throw her great wedding-related parties. OP. I'm a bad gay guy friend. I'm organized when it comes to a lot of things, but planning a wedding is something I've never done and really don't want to learn to do. If I were to ever get married, it's midnight under a full moon at the beach with a few friends and a cookout the next day LOL. Update 1. Hey everyone. First, I apologize. I never thought this was going to go as crazy as it did. I want all of you to know I read all of your responses and responded to as many as I was able. Thank you all for your amazing insights and comments. Many that made me laugh, which I needed. I have been sick and that really helped to cheer me up. I had to meet with my lawyer today regarding family issues. My neighbor/best friend/coworker Laura took me. I really felt awful and driving wasn't a good idea. We were talking about this on the way, and we both were asking a lot of the same questions that all of you were asking. The big one was that we were asking about the circumstances of her transfer. She went from MedSurg 4 Watts to the ER. That is a huge change. I have to work tomorrow, so we will see what happens, but Laura and I are going to ask Kim about the transfer and raise a couple of other concerns. After I got home from the meeting with my lawyer, I slept for the rest of the day. Many of you asked about if Claire and I hang out outside of work. The answer is no. No, I really don't know anything about her. I have helped her a few times with patients and different things, but our relationship is 100% purely work-related. That was why I was so surprised that she asked me to do this. That is why I was so surprised that she asked me about being the man of honor. I have a very small friend base, and in all honesty, I like to keep it that way. I really have no interest in being a part of this. I'm not a wedding person. After reading so many Bridezilla stories and hearing about over-the-top weddings, they have become a huge turnoff to me. Spending tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars with insane, unrealistic demands that turn people against each other. Why? I would rather use that money and spend that time planning my next trip or vacation. Many people said that I was being used as a token or prop in a wedding or a gay best friend. I never really thought about it. I admit that I'm out and proud, but I'm not going to just pretend to be someone's friend just so they can fulfill some kind of fetish they have for wanting to have a gay best friend or some kind of status she feels the need to fulfill. It takes me a lot to get offended, but if this were actually the case, then I would really be rather offended. I was not put on the face of the earth to be someone's play toy. A lot of people have said that maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend. She does. She has brought him in before. If she has any insecurity, I don't understand it. She is attractive, smart, and all this stuff, so I'm at a loss as to why she is acting like this. A lot of people say go to HR. I'm starting that process with my boss Kim. She is completely aware of the situation, being with us when all this happened. She has told me that she is watching the situation and will jump in if I need her to. I trust her completely. While Kim and HR can control the situation from the hospital, they can't control the situation from a personal level, if she were to maybe follow me home or a situation like that. So, I think that covers it all. I wish I could say this is over, but most likely there is more to come. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. About that name oops username, you're not just an RN because there's nothing just about RNs or other nurses. You folks, regardless of gender, do the medical heavy lifting, and when we can't get a straight, sorry. Answer from the oh-so-busy MDs, the nurses provide the noble shit information. OP. My name is kind of an ongoing running inside joke. I'm told at least once a day or so from a patient that I'm just a nurse. One day I heard it 3 times. I don't really take offense to this, and in a joking way, I repeated what the patient said, and my boss Kim jumped my case about, that's not the case at all. I love my job. It's a huge part of me and who I am. It's a part of my identity. Comment 2. I'm curious about her list of demands or responsibilities. Like, did she really think you would change your mind now that you had all this BS work to do and money to spend? OP. It pretty much had me planning the whole thing. She wanted me to plan the bridal shower, the bachelorette party, coordinate dress shopping and fittings, make sure everyone was having fun with the whole thing, just to name a few. Comment 3, OP. What the ever-loving, fresh, creepy hell is this? OP. I had no idea what the ever-loving, fresh, creepy hell was from something. It's just something I have always said. Mini update. I'll be posting an update in a day or 2. Things came to a head today, and it was pretty much just as everyone was saying. I need to take some time to understand everything that happened today. I also have a meeting scheduled Monday with the director of nursing at my hospital, which should bring closure, I hope. Update 2. This intro is going to be long, but I'm telling you about this for a reason, and later in this update it will make sense. I'm hoping this will be done and that this will be the last of this whole situation. I was born into a family where I was referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with. I lived in the shadows of my sister, who was the child my parents wanted. They wanted one child, which was a girl. That way Dad had his daddy's girl, and Mom had Mommy's little princess. Then I came along. Keep in mind that I'm 23, so back then my parents had options but chose to not use any of those options. So instead, my parents raised my sister, and I was raised by a nanny who even to this day is one of the biggest influences in my life, and I am so grateful for her. She helped me with so much. I finally realized all these years later that by being referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with, that they stripped me of my humanity and individuality and self-worth as a person. I think that's why I've worked so hard to establish myself in my career and in my life, as a way to become a person again and not just be that issue that needed to be dealt with. This past Thursday, things came to a head with the bridezilla known as Claire, and the truth came out. My best friend Laura has been sticking close to me when we worked together. If Claire was to start something, we weren't sure if she was going to leave it alone or start up again. I was really hoping that it was done, but she had to try once again. I've been sick, and I had a busy morning, so I really just wanted a few minutes to go to the bathroom, grab a quick snack, and maybe breathe. Claire came up and had her list and asked if I had a few minutes to talk about the wedding planning. I looked at her and told her again, no, that I was not interested in being part of her wedding and that I was not going to help in any way, and she needed to drop the subject and leave me alone. Again, she went into the whole thing of how I was going to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Here we go with that line all of you love the first time. Why in the ever-loving, fresh, creepy hell is it so important for me to be your man of honor? I'm not interested and I'm not doing it. It is exactly as pretty much all of you told me it would be. She was just planning on using me as a token or a play toy. She took all of the screwed-up gay stereotypes that are out in society and put them into one sentence. What modern liberal woman isn't going to have a gay bestie on her arm for special events? I felt everything in my stomach move and a wave of nausea come over me, and I felt like I couldn't get to the bathroom fast enough. This pissed Laura off to no end. Laura is really kind of like the overprotective sister that I wish I would have had and took Claire off to visit our boss Kim and laid it all out. Everything that was said. While I wasn't in on that conversation, Laura and Kim filled me in on what was said. Kim came to check on me, and I was still hiding in the bathroom. She knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. I asked her for a bottle of water first. While I was waiting, I realized two things. I realized why I chose to not hang out with her and why I didn't like her. I couldn't figure out why I didn't like her, just that there was something that gave me the heebie-jeebies. But I realized that I didn't like her because she is a different version of my sister. While Claire is educated and employed, she doesn't care about other people and their feelings. She is like my sister in the sense that if she wants something bad enough, she will figure out how to get it. The second thing I realized was that she did exactly what my parents did to me. She completely dehumanized me and reduced me to an entity, just kind of turned me into a token or a thing for her. I think the word that best describes it is, I'm just a play toy. What really gets me is that just like my sister, Claire doesn't think she did anything wrong and I'm being too sensitive and a delicate snowflake. The next day, an emergency meeting was held at work, and Claire is being suspended pending investigation, and a new transfer is being looked into. Kim made the request for her to be terminated. The director of emergency nursing said this was a last resort, but she was going to be looking into options, which could be sending her to a new hospital or facility. This didn't go over well with me. I asked what would happen if she did the exact same thing to someone different. She didn't really give me an answer, but she said she still needs to look into a few things, and at this point, she is suspended anyway. Here it is. I'm still pretty sick and had to work this weekend. If I can, I'll respond. I want to thank everyone for all the amazing support. I am going back to my lawyer to see if he can figure out how to send her a cease and desist letter to make sure she doesn't contact me. I'm heading to bed. Have a good night. Edit. I keep forgetting to thank my boyfriend. He has been with me on this, but more in the background. First when we were laughing about it, but when everything Thursday happened, he was there as well. I was able to get him away from his unit for a little bit for the "it will be okay" boyfriend hug. He stayed the night with me a couple of nights as well, also helping with me being sick. So yeah, I'm very lucky to have such a great support. Update 3. Hi everyone. First, I apologize for not responding sooner. I have always tried to do what I can to stay engaged with all of you, to respond as often as possible. Truth of the matter is that I hit a brick wall. Between everything with my parents, being sick, and then the bridezilla, I just kind of lost all my motivation to keep the conversation going. But I will say this. I read all of your comments, every one of them, and there are not enough words in any language to say thank you for all the amazing support, feedback, and suggestions. I am truly grateful for everything all of you brought to the table. I went back to my lawyer the other day and told him everything. I told him I only had her name, but I did not have her address, and since he has resources that I don't, I wanted him to find her and send her a cease and desist letter to not contact me. He was looking into this. The good news: Claire has been terminated. While I am not able to talk about all of the details, I can say that this goes a lot deeper than what she did to me, and after Kim did some digging, it brought out some information that could have put our hospital in a serious position. When this information was brought out in the open, It gave the director of emergency nursing, Don, no choice but to terminate her, and it could put the Don in a serious position as well. Honestly, it has Kim, Laura, and myself potentially looking for new jobs if this doesn't get properly corrected. None of us want to change hospitals because then we have to start all over with seniority and benefits. It's a last resort, but it's still something to consider. I guess I can say that this is closed. At least I hope it is. I need to move on with my life. I doubt that Claire will be dumb enough to contact me. She is in enough trouble, and this would only make it worse. Again, I apologize for not being able to keep up with responding back to all of your comments, but again, I can assure you that I read all of them and value all of them as well. Thank you again for the amazing support. Additional info. Comment 1. Can you give any further info about what you learned about her? Had she been moved as a result of something similar? Obviously, you have to be vague, but she sounds wackadoodle. Opie. I honestly don't know much of her personal self, but some of the problems that we are having come to find out was things she was doing when it came to her job and what she was doing wrong. Opie gives more info. Kim, Laura, or myself had nothing to do with getting Claire fired. Claire got herself fired. I'm not sure what I should put on here, so I'll say this much. The question was brought up with Claire's transfer. She went from med-surg to ER. This never happens. The ER is such an intense experience that you have to start an ER at the beginning of your career. It's an 8-week training program while still doing orientation. With that being said, going from ER to med-surg happens often, so naturally, when someone comes from med-surg, it raises some questions. So, basically, what was found out was that Claire in her own way committed assault towards a patient and falsified the patient's charts. The med-surg director knew of this, as did the Don, and it was swept under the rug. We are learning that she may have done this to a patient in the ER as well. I was asked to be in a wedding, and I had no interest in attending. I told her 3 times no in a polite manner, but she refused to take no for an answer. I finally forcefully told her no. Then she did what my parents have done to me for my entire life. She reduced me to a play toy and referred to me as her token gay bestie. This is hardly the case. We never hung out at any time, and I never wanted to. I have no kind of attachment to this woman. So when I say no, I'm saying no for a reason. Had she just accepted my responses, then most likely none of this would have ever happened. OP gives a tiny bit more info. A 14-gauge needle/catheter is the biggest that you can use. If they are ever used, it's mostly on EMS sites, and if it's being used, it's usually for rapid infusion or the patient is shutting down, and you need to get fluids in a hurry and can't get a vein with the standard size. Realistically, you should never have a reason to use a 14-gauge, and if you do, in my opinion, then you better have 3 other people with you to help do this. I hope in my lifetime I never have to use one. Also, the HIPAA notice. It's one of the first things you learn at the beginning of nursing school or med school. Basically, HIPAA is keeping a patient's privacy. What you can't do is talk about the case as long as you don't reveal any information regarding the patient's identity. Also, opening a patient file that you have no reason to open is also a violation of HIPAA as well. These are serious offenses and could result in loss of license. With that being said, take this information and do with it what you will and form your own opinion. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My husband confessed that he cheated on me with my sister at our favorite restaurant where I was going to tell him that I was finally pregnant after 5 years of trying. Henry and I have been married for 5 years now. I thought our marriage was going great until, out of nowhere, my husband confessed to having an affair with my freaking sister. You see, we're both doctors, and while that might seem glamorous or fulfilling to outsiders, it also brings its own set of complexities into our relationship. The long hours, the emotional toll of caring for patients, and the fact that we are both deeply passionate and good at what we do, means that our marriage hasn't always been picture perfect. Balancing our careers with personal time has been tough, and there have been moments when the weight of our jobs made things more difficult. But through it all, we've managed to support each other. He is my partner, and I never had any shred of doubt in my head that I would be spending the rest of my life with him. In fact, 2 months ago, I discovered that I was pregnant. When we first got married, Henry and I were eager to start a family. We tried for a while, but despite our hopes and best efforts, it just never happened for us. So eventually we made peace with it. We stopped actively trying, telling ourselves that if it was meant to be, it would happen in its own time. Letting go of that dream was hard, but we poured our energy into our careers and our relationships, trusting that fate would guide us. So, when I suddenly started experiencing morning sickness, I didn't immediately jump to conclusions. Part of me thought it might just be stress or something related to work, but I decided to take a pregnancy test anyway, just to rule out the possibility. When the result came back positive, I was completely floored. It was such an overwhelming moment, full of disbelief and excitement. I never thought that after all these years, I would find myself staring at that little test, realizing I was going to have a baby. The emotions washed over me in waves, and I had to sit down to process the reality that I was actually pregnant. It was a mix of joy and wonder. At that moment, my first thought was to share the news with Henry. I knew how much this would mean to him after everything we'd been through, but at the time, he was away attending a series of medical conferences. This news was too important to be shared over the phone or through a quick text message, so I decided to wait until he returned so I could tell him face to face, knowing that seeing his reaction in person would make the moment all the more meaningful. The lunch that went wrong. The day Henry was supposed to come back from his trip, I had everything planned out perfectly. I wanted to make the moment special, to celebrate the incredible news that I was pregnant. I had arranged a lunch for us at our favorite restaurant, the one we always went to for important occasions or when we just needed some time to ourselves. It was a place that held a lot of memories for us. Quiet, cozy, and with all the imagine the joy and surprise on his face when I told him the news, thinking of how this moment would be the start of a new chapter in our lives. When I went to pick him up at the airport, though, I could immediately sense that something was off. Henry looked preoccupied, almost lost in thought. He didn't greet me the way he usually would. There was no warm hug, no excitement in his eyes at seeing me after being apart for a while. He barely even said hello, and I could feel the distance in his demeanor. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe the long flights or the stress of the conference had taken a toll on him. I mentioned the reservation at our favorite restaurant, hoping that it would lift his mood and give us a chance to reconnect. But, to my surprise, he sighed, visibly irritated, and said we should probably cancel and just head back home. His tone was sharp, almost as if he were annoyed at the idea. I was taken aback by his reaction. I mean, it wasn't like we had any other major plans for the day, and I thought a nice lunch together would be just the thing to help him unwind. I reasoned with him, saying that since we'd probably end up ordering takeout anyway, it would be better to enjoy a quick lunch out and then head home. He sighed exasperatedly and gave me a curt nod. Then, as if I weren't even there, he went back to looking at his phone, scrolling absent-mindedly while I drove us to the restaurant. By the time we got to the restaurant, the energy between us felt heavy. We took our seats at the table, but Henry hardly spoke a word. Wanting to ease the tension, I asked him about the conference, hoping to spark some conversation, but his responses were short, cold, and distant, just one-word answers that didn't lead anywhere. It was so unlike him. Normally, after these trips, he would share stories about the people he met, the interesting talks he attended, or the new ideas he came across. But this time, it felt like he was holding something back, and I couldn't help but wonder what was really going on. To be fair, I had noticed a slight shift in Henry's behavior in the past few weeks before our lunch that day. He had started growing distant, and while part of me was concerned, I chalked it up to the usual stress that comes with being a doctor. Our jobs are demanding, often leaving us mentally and physically drained, so I obviously didn't think much of it at first. We had both been through rough patches before due to the pressures of work, and I assumed this was just another one of those times. I kept telling myself that he would eventually open up once things settled down, that his mood would improve after his conference, and that we'd get back to normal. But sitting across from him at lunch that day, watching him barely acknowledge me, hardly speak, I began to feel more and more uneasy. Still, I tried to push the nervousness aside. I had waited long enough to tell him about the baby, and despite the tension between us, I was desperate to share the news. I thought maybe, just maybe, hearing about the pregnancy would snap him out of whatever was bothering him, and we could find joy in this life-changing moment together. But as I was gathering the courage to tell him, Just when I was about to share the happiest news of our lives, Henry looked up from his plate, his voice low and steady, and said the words I never imagined hearing. "I've been cheating on you." At first, I didn't even register what he said. The restaurant was noisy with conversations and clinking dishes all around us, and for a second, I thought I had misheard. I let out a nervous laugh and asked, "What?" As if his words had been some kind of mistake. But then he looked me in the eyes, something he hadn't really done all day, and repeated himself, this time more clearly, with an emotionless, almost detached tone. "I have been sleeping with your sister." In that moment, the world around me seemed to stop. My face went numb. My husband was sleeping with my sister, Sister Lexi of all people. My sister. I stared at him, my mind struggling to grasp the meaning of his words. I asked him again, "What do you mean?" Though deep down, I already knew. I didn't want to believe it, but the look on his face left no room for doubt. He just sat there, staring straight at me with an expression so cold and emotionless. Like this was just another fact he was stating, something casual and insignificant. There was no remorse, no sign of the man I thought I knew, the man I had loved and trusted for all these years. It felt like everything I had known, our marriage, our bond, even my own sister, was crumbling right in front of me, and I was powerless to stop it. My eyes began to well up with tears. I could feel the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. With a trembling voice, I asked him, "When did it start?" I needed to know. I wasn't sure why, but some part of me hoped that maybe this was all a mistake, a misunderstanding. He began to tell me, almost casually, how he and Lexi had been sleeping together for the past few months. My heart sank further with each word he said. It all started after Lexi had broken up with her last boyfriend. She was devastated after the breakup and had started coming over to our place frequently for support. I remember those days vividly. I had welcomed her into our home, wanting to be there for her during such a tough time. She was my sister, and I thought we were helping her heal. But little did I know, behind my back, Henry and Lexi were getting closer in ways I could have never imagined. Yes, they had always been friendly. In fact, I remember thinking at the time how nice it was that my husband and my sister got along so well. It gave me comfort knowing that we were all so close as a family. But never in my wildest nightmares did I think they were that close, that they were sleeping together. I couldn't process the enormity of it, the betrayal from both of them. As Henry continued to speak, explaining his affair, I felt everything around me start to blur. I didn't want to hear him anymore. Nothing made sense. My stomach turned, and I felt like I was going to be sick. So, I grabbed my keys off the table and stood up abruptly. I didn't care that we were in the middle of a crowded restaurant. I didn't care that people might have been watching. I just had to get out of there, confronting the evidence. Henry started calling after me as I rushed toward the exit to find my car. It was only when I was in the car, driving towards my house, that I heard my phone ringing. It was Henry, of course. Over and over, he called me not to apologize, but to scold me for abandoning him at the restaurant and for overreacting in front of everybody. I screamed into the phone, telling him to get an Uber and leave me alone. I could barely see the road through my tears as I drove home, my mind racing and my heart shattered. When I finally got home, I locked myself in our bedroom. That is when I broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably as the reality of what had just happened crashed down on me. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. My husband, the man I loved, and my own sister. How could they betray me like this? I cried until I had no tears left and my body was completely exhausted. At some point, Henry must have arrived back at the house. I heard him knocking on the bedroom door, his voice muffled through the wood. He kept saying he wanted to talk, but I couldn't bear to face him. I couldn't listen to him anymore. I refused to open the door, lying on the bed, curled up in a ball as my tears stained the pillow. I didn't know how long I stayed like that, but at some point, I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, it was already midnight. The house was eerily quiet, and Henry had stopped knocking. I decided to head downstairs to get something to eat, as I felt hungry. When I got to the living room, I saw Henry asleep on the couch, his phone resting on the table next to him. The sight of him lying there looking so peaceful made my blood boil. How could he sleep so easily after what he had just confessed to me? I stood there for a moment, seething with anger and disbelief, before my gaze shifted to his phone. I had never done this before, not once in our entire marriage. But that night, for the first time, I unlocked Henry's phone. He hadn't even bothered to change his passcode, which was the same one he'd always used, because that's how confident he was that I'd never be suspicious of him. He was so sure of my trust, so certain I'd never doubt him. Oh, what a fool I had been. How could I have been so blind to what was happening right under my nose? As I scrolled through his messages with my sister, my heart raced, dreading what I would find but needing to know the full truth. And there it was, multiple inappropriate photos they had sent to each other, each one more painful to look at than the last. Explicit images of my husband and my own sister, laughing, teasing each other, and planning their secret meetings. They had even arranged to meet up in various hotels while I had been completely oblivious. The texts from Lexi were what really shattered me. In one of them, she had written about how exciting it was to sleep with him behind my back and how the thrill of deception made their affair even better. She went so far as to say that the sex felt better because of it. I couldn't believe this was real. My own sister, the person I had grown up with and trusted, had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and Henry, the man I had vowed to spend the rest of my life with, had so easily thrown our marriage away. With my hands trembling, I took photos of their messages on my own phone, needing to have evidence of what I had seen. Once I had what I needed, I went back upstairs quietly, moving out and telling Henry's family. I began packing my things. I knew I couldn't stay in that house under the same roof as Henry. I wasn't going to raise this baby with an unfaithful husband who had so deeply shattered my trust. I threw a few essentials into a bag, trying to hold myself together, but my heart was pounding in my chest and my hand shook with every item I packed. Once I was done, I drove straight to my parents' house, which was a town over. When I arrived at my parents' place, they were surprised to see me, but I didn't go into details right away. Couldn't. I just told them I needed to stay with them for a while, and thankfully, they didn't ask too many questions that night. Ever since that night, I've been staying with my parents. Yes, I'm currently going through the process of separating from Henry. After everything that has happened, I've wasted no time in filing for divorce. There's no going back after the betrayal I've experienced. My parents, too, are furious, and they've completely cut Lexi off after finding out about everything. They are embarrassed for what she has done, and she's no longer welcome in our family. Lexi has called me multiple times to apologize over and over, claiming that it was all just a huge mistake, but I don't know if I can ever forgive her. Ironically, the support I've received from Henry's family has been overwhelming, especially considering that it's their own son who caused this mess. From the moment they found out about his infidelity, they made it very clear that they were deeply disappointed in him. They don't approve of what he's done and have taken a firm stance. They've told him that they are going to refuse to accept my sister as part of their family. It's like they see Henry for who he truly is now, and they've made no effort to hide their disgust. I had kept my pregnancy a secret from Henry and his parents for as long as I could. The thought of sharing such happy news in the middle of all this chaos seemed impossible. But 2 weeks ago, after returning from my ultrasound appointment and talking about it with my parents, I couldn't keep this big news to myself any longer. When I finally met with Henry to tell him about the pregnancy, I had already mentally prepared myself for a difficult conversation. However, nothing could have prepared me for the cruelty of his reaction. The first words out of his mouth were only accusations. He started accusing me of baby trapping him, claiming I was somehow trying to manipulate him into staying with me since I was jealous of my sister. His words cut deep. Then he actually told me he wished I would have a miscarriage since he didn't want this baby anyway. He looked me in the eye, completely indifferent to how hurtful and disgusting his words were, and said if I continued along with the pregnancy, he wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. My body was trembling with anger hearing his words, and at that moment, if I hadn't been pregnant, I swear I would have punched him in the face without thinking twice. But I had to keep it together for the sake of my baby, the baby that he didn't want, the baby that was innocent in all of this chaos. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down, and made it clear to him that I wasn't trying to trap him or force him into anything. I had only told him about the pregnancy because it was my duty to inform him as the father of this child. But as for me, I wanted nothing to do with him, and he needn't worry about me ever wanting him back. All I expected from him was to fulfill his legal obligation and pay child support when the time came. It was as simple as that. His responsibilities might be something he could try to run from, but I wasn't going to let him off the hook that easily. He tried to argue with me, of course, he always likes having the last word, but I just turned and walked away. Later, I also had to tell Henry's family about my pregnancy, since I felt that they deserved to know. Their reaction was immediate. His parents came over as soon as they found out, and they've been nothing but supportive since. They've assured me repeatedly that if Henry continues to not accept responsibility for the baby, then they'll make sure that the child is well taken care of. In fact, they're so furious with Henry that they've gone as far as to say they'll make sure a part of the inheritance will go directly to the baby, not to him. They've made it clear that if he chooses this life with Lexi and abandons his responsibility to be a present father for the child, then he won't see a penny of his inheritance ever again. Henry's attempts to return. Well, after that conversation with Henry and his family, I received a message from Lexi this week, who apologized to me again and informed me that she hated herself for how she had broken up my family and that after finding out that I was pregnant, she had decided to leave Henry for good. She assured me that she would never show her face to me ever again and that all she wished for was for my baby to grow up well. I never even bothered to reply back to her message. But now Henry's behavior seems to have completely shifted after everything he's put me through. From his cruel accusations of baby trapping to wishing harm on our child, he suddenly wants another chance. Although he still has no idea about the promises his parents have made to ensure our baby receives his inheritance. What is driving him, though, is the fact that his entire world has started to collapse around him. Lexi has left him. His family has completely turned their backs on him, and even our co-workers at the hospital have distanced themselves from him. The once confident, arrogant man who thought he could get away with anything is now feeling alone and humiliated because he's facing the consequences of his own actions. So now, he has conveniently decided that he wants to be a part of my life again and for the sake of our child, no less. He has been trying to frame it as though he suddenly cares about creating a stable environment for our baby to grow up in. When I laughed at his absurd demands and told him I wasn't going back to him, he didn't take it well. Of course, true to form, he turned things around and attacked me again, calling me a bad mother. According to him, I'm the one who's going to ruin our child's life because I won't let him play happy family, now that his life has fallen apart for his own stupid mistake. He even went as far as to say he would make sure our child grows up hating me for breaking up our family. Aita for divorcing my husband after what he has done. Update 1. To clarify a few points. As for everyone asking about the kind of relationship Lexi and I have had to understand a bit more about why my sister would do this to me, well, what can I say? We've had a normal sibling relationship all our lives. Neither of us was the golden child of the family, and both of us were equally loved by our parents. We never had any major fights or jealousy between us. I have always loved my sister through thick and thin, which is why this hurts more. My sister did something I can't imagine doing to anyone, not even an enemy. I am glad that Lexi left him after finding out about my pregnancy. I mean, that man had the audacity to break up our marriage, thinking that he could get away with a younger version of me. But too bad he lost her too. Of course, this doesn't mean that I'm going to ever forgive Lexi, but I am just glad that Henry is all alone now. Update 2. Henry decided to come over to my parents' place to try to fix things again, but this time, things got even worse. First, he started to convince me again to get back together. He told me how parents sometimes need to make sacrifices for the sake of their children. He went on about how our baby deserved to grow up with 2 parents instead of 1. But I was tired of this narrative. I reminded him bluntly that not too long ago, he didn't even want this baby. He had wished I would have a miscarriage, for crying out loud. Now suddenly, he's preaching about the importance of family and sacrifice? When I threw that in his face, he tried to backtrack, saying that maybe once he held the baby, his mind would change. His words were hollow, just like every promise he had ever made. I told him straight to his face, "He slept with my sister. There was zero chance of us ever getting back together. No amount of pleading or guilt-tripping was going to change that. But instead of accepting responsibility, Henry decided to turn things around on me. He started accusing me of his affair by saying how I had stopped showing him affection for months and that I was always busy with work. He claimed he had expected me to slow down my career after we got married. But I never did. Couldn't help but scoff. This was classic Henry, always trying to shift the blame and make me feel like I was the one at fault for his betrayal. He knew exactly who I was before we got married. We had been co-workers for years before we got together. So why was he suddenly acting surprised that I was passionate about my career? It wasn't like I ever hid my ambitions from him. In fact, we had bonded over our shared drive to succeed in medicine. I reminded him of this and told him that I wasn't about to apologize for working hard, especially since he had been doing the exact same thing for years. This is who I am, and I wasn't going to let him gaslight me. That's when he started whining about Lexi. He said she had been there for him when he was feeling vulnerable, and he blamed me for not even noticing that he had been cheating on me for months. It was as if he was trying to make me feel guilty for not catching him in the act sooner, as if that somehow excused his betrayal. At this point, I was seething. I told him flat out that he needed to stop trying to blame me for his infidelity. He was the one who crossed the line, not me, and even his own parents knew that what he did was unforgivable. They had taken my side for a reason. They saw him for who he really was. Henry scoffed, his arrogance flaring up again, and said that his parents loved him and would eventually forgive him no matter what. So that's when I couldn't hold it in any longer. I told him the truth, that his parents were done with him and that they had already decided to cut him off from his inheritance. Not only that, but all that money was going to our baby instead of him. I watched his face crumble as the realization hit him. For the first time since all of this began, he was at a loss for words. His usual confidence, his smugness, had all vanished in an instant. And I won't lie, I did feel a certain satisfaction watching him process the consequences of his actions. After everything he had put me through, seeing him finally face some real consequences was a small but significant moment of justice. He started yelling at me, calling me vile and disgusting for ruining his life and how he wished he had cheated on me sooner. I just shook my head and asked him to leave, as this entire conversation was getting pointless. Then Henry got aggressively close to me and kept yelling, which made me feel really uncomfortable. At this point, my parents, who were in the other room and had tried to give me some privacy, came out to check on me since they could hear Henry's loud words. When my dad saw Henry just inches from my face and me cowering, in an instant, he rushed over and pulled Henry away. Then I watched as my dad punched Henry in the face. Henry became disoriented at first and couldn't understand what had just happened. Then my dad, towering over him, grabbed him by the collar, dragged him out and shoved him out the door. I watched as my dad threatened him loudly that if he ever showed his face again to us, it would be the last day on this earth. Since then, there's been complete silence from Henry for days. I guess he has been really shaken up by everything. He hasn't called or texted, and I finally found some peace. I'm so grateful my dad stood up for me, and I can't wait to divorce this horrible man and close this chapter of my life for good. Update 3. It's been 8 months since my last update. I just wanted to update everyone who has been following my story. As for my pregnancy, I did give birth, and my daughter has been doing well. Henry's parents have set up a trust fund for her and have continued to visit me. They want nothing to do with Henry and have completely iced him out of the family. I've finally gotten the divorce I wanted from my ex-husband and have full custody of my child. For now, the only thing Henry is responsible for is sending child support. Furthermore, he didn't fight me over anything during our divorce proceedings and ended up paying a hefty alimony due to his affair. Lexi does send me messages here and there, but overall, she hasn't bothered me much, which is the greatest gift she could have given me after everything she put me through. I don't think she and Henry will ever get back together, but honestly, I don't care anymore. I am currently focused on my work and raising my daughter to be a good human being. That's all. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Mill secretly ordered hundreds of sunflowers for our wedding, but I'm allergic to them and she knew it. So my fiancé cut her off completely, and now she's begging to come back. My fiancé, Michael, 25M, and I, 28F, have been together for almost 4 years now, and we got engaged a couple of months ago. Our relationship has been fairly normal and well received by our families, except for his mother. Even while we were dating and he had introduced me to his family, I had understood that even if the rest of the family approved of me, it wouldn't matter to her because she did not like me and she had made up her mind about it. She always had a bit of an attitude while interacting with me, and I got this vibe that she felt like she was better than me. I did try to befriend her several times, but it never worked, and I even discussed it with Michael. But he just told me that we can't do anything about it because that's just how his mother functions. She doesn't approve of anybody who isn't exactly the kind of woman that she likes, down to the very last detail, and I already don't fit into that criteria by being older than her son, even if it's just 3 years. She thinks that it makes a huge difference and that it's weird for me to be dating him. On top of that, she doesn't think that I'm a good fit for the family either because I don't come from a wealthy family myself as they do. Michael's family owns a catering and event management business, perhaps one of the biggest and most well-known ones in the city, that had been started by his grandparents, and now he's going to inherit the business once his parents retire. But I don't really care about that. I didn't even know that he came from a family like this when I first started dating him. It honestly doesn't make any difference to me what kind of money he makes because I'm an independent woman and have been working since I was 18, trying to make sure that I wouldn't have to rely on anyone for money. So I take pride in that. Both my parents have had pretty normal jobs and are really ordinary people. My mom is a registered nurse, and my dad was a software developer. He passed away when I was in college. But they had raised me to the best of their abilities, and when I found out that Michael's mom suspected me of being a gold digger, I found it quite offensive because I tried my best to keep our expenses equal while Michael and I were dating. It was very clear that she looked down on me for reasons that were really petty and mean, so after some time, I stopped putting in an effort to get her to like me because I knew that would be pointless. Michael did fight for me, but he had to also stay on good terms with both his parents since his mother also played an active role in the business, and it would get really awkward for him at work to constantly be picking fights with his mom, and I understood that. However, after something that happened recently, he has completely cut his mother out of his life, and even though they do see each other at work, he tries not to interact with her. I'm the one being held responsible for this, even though I don't understand how I'm supposed to be fixing any of this. So, like I said, Michael and I got engaged about 4 months ago, and on the night of our engagement, something really weird happened. His mom took me aside a few minutes after he had proposed and I had accepted. She told me that she wanted to apologize to me for everything that had happened before this, the way she had treated me badly and for suspecting me of having anything but the best intentions at heart. She sounded really sincere, and I was also pretty happy that night, so I accepted her apology, and we decided that we were going to start afresh. After all, her son and I were going to start a new chapter of our lives soon enough, so why not give her a chance as well? Ever since Michael and I got engaged, his mother had been exceptionally nice to me and had even been taking a keen interest in wedding planning. In fact, she had pretty much taken over the process along with us, which was a bit inconvenient because what Michael and I really wanted was a small-scale, intimate, and cutesy kind of wedding. I wanted that for myself because I'm a bit of an introvert, and massive celebrations are really not my thing. Michael, well, that's pretty much his job, so he didn't want his wedding planning to feel like work to him. So both of us had agreed upon the fact that we wanted a small wedding. But once his mother started getting involved, things started changing because she wanted a huge wedding for us. She insisted that we could always have a small ceremony for us and our families privately later on, but she insisted that she wanted to throw a grand and lavish wedding for her only child. So she pretty much played an active role in the wedding planning, and it was quite exhausting because whatever she suggested, we really didn't want that. So it was difficult for us to come to a common ground. Michael got into frequent arguments with her while planning because he just wanted everything to be scaled down, and she wasn't ready for that, and I ended up playing the mediator in the situation because I had just started getting along with his mother. I didn't want to ruin it even though I didn't agree with her either. That's how it had been going for the past couple of months, and it felt like the wedding that we had wanted was quite far from us at this point. Most of the planning was taking place right in front of us, but the one thing that his mom had said that she was going to handle all on her own was the floral decorations and arrangements, and we let her take over the department entirely as well because that's pretty much her forte and at least it would get her off our back for a few days. But then, a couple of days ago, I received an email saying that the floral arrangements for my wedding had been finalized. And it was shocking for me because the order that had been placed mentioned sunflowers in quantities that would prove dangerous to my health, given that I am severely allergic to them. It's an isolated allergy and I'm already asthmatic, so that would make it difficult for me to breathe and also lead to hives, especially when I'm exposed to sunflowers, and the kind of quantities that had been mentioned in that email. I thought that there must have been a mistake, so I even phoned the florist to ask what this was all about. And I was told that it was Michael's mother who had placed that order for the wedding and had even confirmed it herself. She knew for a fact that I was severely allergic to sunflowers in particular and could not be exposed to them, especially so many of them, and yet she had gone out of her way to order those for the wedding. She had overlooked the fact that all the wedding expenses were being put on the tab for their business, and management had been given instructions to forward all wedding-related emails to me and Michael. I guess she forgot about that and put the order of the flowers on the tab, and I ended up receiving that email. I found it hard to believe because that just meant that the past few months had been fake, that she had only been trying to get on my good side so she could eventually ruin my wedding by getting me to trust her and then pull off this stunt. I didn't even bother trying to call her. I directly approached Michael and I told him about that email. I was really disappointed about what had just happened myself, but Michael's reaction to that email was 10 times more intense than that of mine because he was furious. After I showed him that email, he immediately called his parents up and got into a huge fight with his mother. His mom kept trying to claim that it had just been an oversight, but it couldn't possibly have been a mistake because everybody in the family knew that I was extremely allergic to sunflowers in particular. It's not even a common or usual allergy, so I don't know how anybody could just forget. Besides, it's not like sunflowers would even go with the theme that she had suggested, and since flower arrangements were her forte, it was odd that she had gone with sunflowers as her choice given the color scheme of the wedding. It would clash against the colors of the wedding, and she knew it, so we were not buying any of her silly excuses. That was around a week ago, and since then, I have had absolutely no contact with her. Michael was also pretty upset because even though he had never approved of his mother's attitude toward me, he had always tried to keep things peaceful. But after this incident, it was clear that she was going to stop at nothing to make me feel like I was not part of the family, even if it meant ruining her only child's wedding. And that was why, after that last fight with his mother, even Michael cut her off. He still has to see her at work and stuff, but he tries his best not to talk to her, and things have been very tense. People at work have also taken note of the situation between them, and there's been a lot of gossip about it. The most troubled person right now is probably my father-in-law because he thinks that this is not a good look for the company and it's creating a hostile work environment. He has been trying to convince me to speak to Michael and make peace with his mother, regardless of everything that has happened, because this is affecting their professional relationship right now. But I really don't think that it's Michael's fault, and that's why I've been trying to explain to him that I think I need to speak to him. It's his mother who needs to apologize to both of us for what she had been trying to do because we are not going to buy the fact that she had just forgotten that I was allergic to sunflowers or it had slipped her mind that they were not going to go with the theme. Whatever she had been trying to do, it had been intentional, and had we not caught her in the act, she would have probably succeeded in ruining our wedding and triggered an allergic reaction for me in the process. So we have been going back and forth on that. Recently, even his mother reached out to me a couple of days ago via email and told me that she was being truthful about my allergy having slipped her mind totally, and she really did not have any intention of ruining the wedding like we were making it out to be, and she really wanted to give our relationship a chance. She told me that she really wants to be part of the wedding, and at this point only I can make it happen because her son refuses to even acknowledge her existence, and even a couple of other members of the family have started to ignore her because they have found out from Michael what had happened. But I haven't responded to that email so far. Michael and I have scrapped all the arrangements that have been made so far because honestly that was how his mother wanted us to get married. We were never on board with the extravagant wedding in the first place, so now we are going to do it our way, and we are planning on not inviting her to the wedding at all. We have even decided that we are going to get married sooner than expected because now that we are not having a huge wedding, we can get the arrangements done in the next couple of months, and then we'll be married. We won't have to wait until the end of the year like Michael's mother had wanted us to. On the last phone call that I had with my father-in-law just last evening, he had brought up how badly Michael had behaved with his mother at work earlier that day and had totally ignored her during a meeting. So he told me that I really needed to step in and talk to Michael because nobody else could fix this apart from me. And once again, I told him that I did not think that he was doing anything wrong. At least he was not trying to humiliate or insult her. He had just ignored her. Besides, this was their family business and they chose how to run it. I didn't want to get involved. Then Michael's father started talking about how we had canceled all the arrangements for the wedding. And that's when I told him that we were planning things separately now since we had always wanted a small and private wedding in the first place. And then he asked me if we had any intention of inviting his mother to the ceremony. And I decided to be honest with him and I told him that given the current situation, we didn't want her there. That was a rookie mistake because his father almost immediately started panicking and told me that things were bad enough as it is. Not getting invited to the wedding would completely shatter his mother, and I needed to do something about this right now. I tried to explain to him that there was nothing that I could do because after what had happened, it would be impossible for me to convince even myself that she had our best interests at heart, let alone Michael's. And if somebody was not our well-wisher, we obviously wouldn't want them at our wedding. But then Michael's father started acting hysterical and told me that I was making a huge deal out of nothing, and that his wife had probably not even intended to hurt us or ruin the wedding like we were making it out to be. He said that we needed to sit down with her, clear the air, and give her a chance to prove that she didn't have any bad intentions and that the sunflower thing had been just an accident. And if we don't, then I would be just as bad as her because I would be judging her on the basis of my preconceived notions about her as she had done to me. I don't understand if he's trying to manipulate me or if he genuinely feels that way, but regardless, Wibda for not inviting my mother-in-law to my wedding after I found out that she was planning on ruining it. Update 1. So, it has been a couple of days since I posted, and since then, the only thing that I've done about the situation at hand is just speak to Michael about it. He already knew that his father had been talking to me and trying to get me to convince him to speak to his mother, and he had told me to ignore it. The only reason I had continued to speak to my father-in-law was because I actually do get along with him otherwise, and I did not want to ruin my relationship with him because of this. But after I discussed things with Michael, I told him that it was bothering me how much I was being pressured to fix the situation even though it was really not my fault. He told me that the next time that I am contacted by either of them, I should just tell them that I'm not interested in getting involved. He also told me that he has been quite professional at work. The only thing that has changed is that he doesn't greet his mother anymore and tries not to speak to her. And yes, it has sparked a lot of gossip and speculation about what has actually gone wrong between them. But his parents are exaggerating how much of an effect it has had on their professional relationship. Even the incident at the meeting that they were referring to, where he had apparently ignored her and blatantly disrespected her at work, was really not that bad. She had just said something and made some suggestions, and he had not replied to it directly but had acknowledged it with just a nod of his head. He thought that it was enough, but according to his parents, that was disrespectful. I don't even understand how. But at this point, it just seems like they are reaching out because they want to create an issue out of his behavior so they have something to hold over us. The bottom line is that he hasn't let his personal equation with his mother get in the way of his professional commitments, and I think that's all that matters. He doesn't have to like her to work with her, and that's pretty obvious. I don't understand why his parents are making such a huge deal out of it, and even Michael agrees that they really don't have any reason to keep dragging me into this because even if I am the only person that they think can fix the situation, they should not be counting on me. If they have a problem with his behavior, they need to pick it up with him and stop bothering me. I've already said that to his father several times now, but now I know that the next time he contacts me, I'm going to make it very clear to him, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it like I've been doing so far. Update 2. Hey, so a couple of days ago, Michael and I had decided that the next time his father calls me to discuss him and his relationship with his mother, I just need to tell him that I'm not going to get myself involved. So today, when his father called me after some small talk, when he brought up what we usually talk about lately, I made it very clear to him that I'm not interested in discussing it anymore. I had been trying to explain this to him for the past couple of weeks ever since that incident with the sunflowers and the email, but so far he had been ignoring me. And I told him that it was just not cool that he was trying to make me feel like I was responsible for any of this because I was really not. If there was a problem that he had to take it up with his son and his wife and not with me. It's not my responsibility to maintain the peace of their family, especially when I have always been treated badly by his wife. She set the tone of our relationship by disrespecting me in the past, and now it's really stupid of her to expect me to be on her side and believe that she did not have any bad intentions and didn't want to ruin our wedding. My father-in-law seemed a bit shocked that I had taken such a serious tone with him because usually when I talk about these things, I try my best to keep things nice and cordial. This time I sounded pretty annoyed. However, I'm thankful that he seemed to understand that I was done with this discussion, and he told me that he had only been trying to talk to me about this because at the moment, neither his own son nor his wife were in a state to communicate anymore, and he thought that I could do something about it by talking to Michael. He said that he himself had been trying, but every time that he tried to bring it up with Michael, the discussion ended as soon as it began because Michael would just leave or hang up or whatever. And trying to speak to his wife about it was pointless because ever since Michael had stopped speaking to her after that fight, she had been devastated, and she really wanted to talk to him, but she had been cut off from everywhere. She was in a very fragile emotional state currently and just kept insisting that she did not have any intentions of ruining our wedding. But of course we didn't believe that, and I still don't, to be honest. Crying about it is not going to change the facts, and I'm going to stand by that. I do feel bad about the fact that she has been breaking down about it ever since Michael cut her off, but I really don't think that I should feel responsible or guilty about it because I did not create this situation. I might have even believed that it was an accident had she not treated me terribly in the past, so even if I wanted to, I really can't help but doubt her. Anyway, my father-in-law told me that he could understand why I was not inclined to believe Michael's mother about her intentions or why I didn't even want to get involved in the first place, so he promised me that he was not going to push it anymore with me. He even apologized for bringing it up over and over again in the past couple of weeks. He just told me that he was worried about the future of their professional relationship and also their personal relationship since things had really taken a hit. A lot of relatives so close to Michael are not speaking to his mother anymore and have even blocked her on social media and stuff, so it's pretty serious. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. She mostly just cares about the fact that her own son doesn't want to speak to her anymore and thinks so badly of her that he actually believes that she would do something so dangerous and crazy on purpose to ruin his wedding. I felt really bad for Michael's father at that moment because I'm sure it couldn't have been easy for him to try and balance all of this for the past couple of weeks. But then again, not my circus, not my monkeys. So I told him that I could totally understand where he was coming from, and I really appreciated the fact that he was trying so hard to hold his family together. It just showed how dedicated he was as a family man, and that was really appreciable. However, the only thing that I could talk to Michael about was his professional life and trying to make sure that he kept things all dignified and cordial at work. That was the only thing that I was comfortable talking to him about. Everything else he would have to come to a conclusion about on his own. That seemed to pacify his father, and then we ended up disconnecting on a good note. It was a conversation that desperately needed to be had, and I'm glad that we had it. I've also spoken to Michael about his father's concerns regarding the work environment, and he has told me that he is going to make sure he takes care to be respectful and cordial with his mother at work at the very least, and I do agree that we shouldn't let our personal differences affect our working relationships, so I think that's pretty valid. But apart from that, I'm staying out of this, and I'm glad that my father-in-law respects that. Update 3. So today, Michael's mother decided to visit us. It's been close to a month since we stopped speaking to her, and I really wasn't expecting her to show up. But I decided to invite her in and be polite to her when she did ring the bell. We did not speak and waited for Michael to come to the living room, and then she started talking. She looked very upset and exhausted, and that was part of the reason why I'd let her in instead of telling her to stay out, because I didn't want to be disrespectful or petty. Once she started talking, she apologized to both of us and told us that she did not have any intention of ruining the wedding like we believe she did. But she could understand where it was coming from because it wasn't like she had been nice to me in the past, so of course we would be inclined to believe the worst of her, and she no longer wanted us to feel responsible for that. She realized that in spite of having reached out to us on several occasions so far, the one thing that she hadn't done was try to reach out to us in person and apologize for whatever had happened. So she was here, and she didn't think that we would just forgive her in one day, but it was worth a try. She explained to me that the thing with the sunflowers had genuinely been an accident, and she had thought that the flowers would add a pop of color to the wedding, which is why she had placed that order without thinking it through. While she was speaking, Michael and I said nothing, and when she went silent for a couple of minutes after apologizing, Michael told her that he needed some time to think about it before he could decide whether he wanted to forgive her or not. But whether she would be invited to the wedding or not, that is up to me. So I told her the same thing. I also needed some time to think about whether I wanted her at the wedding or not because things have gone really sour in the recent past. His mother did not say anything much after that. She just said that she understood, and then she got up and left after saying goodbye to both of us and wishing us the best for the future, even if she was not invited to the wedding. It was quite sad, but at least she had apologized, and that was still an improvement from the situation that we were in for the past couple of weeks. As for the question of whether she is going to be invited to the wedding or not, there are still a couple of months to go, so let's just see what happens. Update 4. So, Michael and I got married a couple of days ago, and it was beautiful. We had just the kind of wedding that we had initially wanted. A small and private affair, but still beautifully done. Now that we are husband and wife, we are so excited to start a new chapter as a couple, and we are also really happy that we were able to put an end to all the drama. I know you guys must be wondering whether my mother-in-law had been invited or not, and for better or for worse, she was there. We had asked her to give us some time a couple of months ago when she approached us to ask for forgiveness, and she had done exactly that. She had stopped bothering us constantly, and even at work, she would try her best to keep things professional, not get oversensitive about things. If she had to say anything to us, she would get her husband to contact me or Michael, and that's how we would communicate. Mostly, it was just her reminding us that she was still very sorry and she wished us all the best. Gradually, we started warming up to her, and eventually, when we finally sent out the wedding invite, we decided to invite her as well. I still don't know, and I don't think I'll ever be sure, if the sunflower incident was actually a mistake or if it had been done on purpose. But now that we were starting a new chapter, Michael and I wanted to leave all of this petty drama in the past. When she found out that she had been invited, she called us up crying and told us that she was really grateful that we had decided to do this and promised us that she would never let us down again and make up for all the mistakes that she had made in the past. And she did exactly that because she personally curated a beautiful bridal bouquet for me and even arranged for a stunning corsage for Michael. She told us that it wasn't much, but it was just her trying to apologize to us and make up for everything. There was no trouble at the wedding. It went really smoothly, and she and my father-in-law even delivered a wonderful speech in our honor. Could have gone wrong, I do agree with that, but it didn't, and that's what matters. Overall, I'm really glad that I decided to give her a chance because it turned out to be a good decision. I wouldn't say that everything has gone back to normal, but who knows, slowly and surely it probably will. But for now, Michael and I only care about leaving for our honeymoon, and that's what we are looking forward to at the moment. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Caught my husband cheating with the younger intern after 3 years of marriage, so I exposed him at our anniversary party. I'm Carla, 32F, and for the last 3 years, I've been married to my now estranged husband, Evan, 35M. We've known each other for 5 years in total. We were those college sweethearts that everyone assumed would make it, you know? We met during our final year of university, dated all through the awkward postgrad years, and eventually got married. When we first started dating, it was that typical power couple dynamic. He was ambitious, driven, and had just started a tech company, while I supported him by taking care of things on the home front. It worked, at least it seemed like it did. After we got married, he was doing well as a CEO of his own tech startup, and from the outside we looked like the perfect couple, big house, nice vacations, you name it. But beneath the surface, things started to change. He became more distant over the last year or so. We weren't connecting like we used to. He was always working late or suddenly needed to go on business trips. There were times when he'd buy new clothes, but I wouldn't see him wear them. His phone was glued to his hand, and if I even glanced at it, he'd get defensive. Still, I never thought in a million years that he'd be cheating on me. It all started clicking when the small red flags I had been ignoring finally became too big to look past. Evan began staying out late more frequently, and when he was home, he was glued to his phone like it was a lifeline. I noticed how protective he became of it. He'd get jumpy if I even asked to borrow it. He started getting new clothes, but I never saw him wear them around me. He was also less affectionate, as if he had checked out of the relationship. The real turning point was when I started noticing odd charges on our credit card. There were dinners and hotel stays that I definitely wasn't a part of. I kept asking myself if I was just being paranoid, but my gut was telling me something was wrong. Then one night, I grabbed his phone when he left it on the counter to take a shower, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. There were texts from a girl named Dana. She was 27 and worked as an intern at his company. Their conversations were sickeningly romantic, as if they were some young couple who had just started dating. The affair had been going on for 8 months. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He had the nerve to tell me that our marriage had been failing for a while and that he'd felt neglected. This was news to me. I thought everything was fine. Sure, we had the usual marital ups and downs, but who doesn't? He said he was confused and didn't know how to end things with her or with me. But at that point, I had no confusion. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I was furious and, most of all, humiliated. How could he do this to me after everything we'd been through? All the sacrifices I made for him, for his career, for us? I spent weeks between crying my eyes out and being so angry I couldn't even think straight. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. I started gathering every bit of evidence I could. Screenshots of his texts, credit card statements, even photos of him and Dana that I found online. I consulted with a divorce attorney who advised me to document everything, and I did. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. After everything I'd done for him, I deserved better than this. And then I came up with the perfect plan. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, to experience the humiliation and shame he had put me through. I decided to throw a surprise anniversary party. Only, the surprise wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be the exposure of his affair. I invited both of our families, along with some close friends, making it seem like I wanted to mark the occasion of our 3rd wedding anniversary in a special way. I can't lie, it felt a little twisted, but after everything, I didn't care anymore. He deserved to be exposed. The day of the anniversary party arrived, and the house was filled with people. My parents were there, his parents, our siblings, and some close friends who had seen us as the ideal couple. Everyone was mingling and talking, unaware of what I was going to do. Evan showed up, oblivious to what was going on, smiling and acting as if nothing was wrong. I felt sick just looking at him, but I kept my cool. When the time came, I made an announcement. I thanked everyone for coming and then said I had a surprise. First, Evan looked confused but didn't say anything. That's when I pulled out my phone and connected it to the big screen in the living room. I started playing the screenshots of his messages with Dana, every flirty text, every plan for secret meetups. Evan's face turned white, and people began gasping. My mother started crying, and his parents looked like they didn't even know who he was anymore. Right on cue, guess who shows up? Yep, Dana herself walked in, thinking she was joining a happy celebration. When she realized what was happening, she froze. Evan just stood there, unable to say a word, as everyone stared at him in disbelief. I ended up by announcing that I was filing for divorce. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just calmly said I was done, and I walked out of my own house, leaving him there to deal with the aftermath and my parents. My sister, Alyssa, was waiting for me outside, ready to take me home. As soon as we left, I blocked Evan on everything, my phone, social media, email, you name it. After leaving the party, I moved in with my sister, Alyssa. The first thing I did the next morning was file for divorce, citing infidelity. I had all the evidence lined up, so there was no way he could weasel out of it. Evan, of course, freaked out when he realized I was serious. He tried calling and texting, but like I said, I had blocked him on everything. He even showed up at Alyssa's house a few times, begging to talk to me. I refused. There was nothing left to say. He tried to downplay the affair, saying it was a one-time mistake and that he'd been confused. But 8 months of sneaking around with some intern isn't a mistake. It's a deliberate choice. I've already spoken with my lawyer, and we're moving forward with the divorce proceedings. He's contesting it now, of course, claiming that we can work through this and begging me to give him another chance. He even tried to tell me that his feelings for Dana weren't real and that he had been going through some sort of midlife crisis. He swore up and down that he still loves me and wants to fix things, but I just don't see how that's possible. Honestly, I don't think I could ever look at him the same way again, much less trust him. I've made up my mind that I want out, but part of me is second-guessing. I've invested so much into this relationship, into our life together, and I wonder if I'm making the right choice by walking away. Should I stick to my guns and finalize the divorce? Or is there any chance at saving this marriage? Update 1. After the anniversary party, everything moved faster than I expected, and at the same time it felt like I was stuck in slow motion. Evan tried to get in touch with me repeatedly, even showing up at Alyssa's place a few more times, but I refused to see him. I had made my decision and I was sticking to it. I wasn't going to let him gaslight me into thinking this was just a one-time mistake or something we could easily move past. I pushed forward with the divorce as soon as possible. My lawyer was fantastic. She laid everything out for me and made sure I had all the evidence we needed to move things along. But, of course, Evan wasn't going to make it easy. He contested the divorce. He was dragging his feet, claiming he wanted to work things out and that he could change. Funny how someone who's been sneaking around behind my back for nearly a year suddenly wants to become husband of the year the moment he gets caught. Our biggest sticking point was, unsurprisingly, money. Evan's startup had taken off over the last couple of years, and though we had a decent prenup, the situation wasn't as straightforward as I had hoped. He tried to lowball me, offering me less than what I was entitled to, which wasn't surprising but still hurt. It was like he was trying to punish me for exposing him. His lawyer kept delaying things, dragging the process out as much as possible, probably hoping I'd get exhausted and give up. But if there's one thing I've learned about myself, it's that I don't give up easily. His startup became the biggest point of contention. Evan claimed that because the company was his baby, I shouldn't have any claim to it, but I had supported him through all the tough times, emotionally and financially. I was there when he wasn't sure if it was going to succeed, and I was the one who encouraged him to keep going when things got tough. So, yeah, I wanted my fair share, and I wasn't about to let him act like I hadn't played a part in his success. While the divorce was processing, word got out about the affair at his company. I'm not sure how it leaked, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a tiny bit satisfied. The news spread fast, and soon enough, people at work were whispering behind his back. It didn't take long for HR to get involved, especially when they found out Dana was an intern. There's always talk about power imbalances and inappropriate relationships in the workplace, and apparently Evan's affair with Dana crossed several lines. She got fired a few weeks after the news broke, and from what I heard, it wasn't a quiet exit. Evan's reputation took a hit, too. Investors started to get skittish. No one wants to back a CEO with a scandal hanging over his head. It didn't help that his employees were losing respect for him. People were quitting and morale was at an all-time low. His once booming startup started struggling, and for the first time he wasn't looking like the golden boy anymore. I felt bad for Dana, even though she'd been sleeping with my husband. She was young, likely impressionable, and Evan had clearly taken advantage of that. As for me, I started to feel a strange sense of relief. The anger, the heartbreak, it was all still there. But once the divorce papers were in motion and I cut Evan off completely, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I wasn't trapped in a loveless marriage anymore, and the constant worry, the anxiety of wondering where he was or what he was doing vanished. I started to focus on myself for the first time in what felt like years. I won't lie, there were dark days. There were moments when I questioned everything, from whether I'd been a good enough wife to how I missed the signs. I wondered if I had done something wrong. But every time I started doubting myself, I remembered the text messages and those late nights, and my resolve would harden again. He didn't just make a mistake. He made a series of choices to betray me. That wasn't on me. A few months passed, and while I wasn't actively looking for love again, I started casually dating. It felt strange at first, meeting new people, getting back out there, but it was a distraction, and it reminded me that I was still young and still had a lot to offer. I wasn't going to let what Evan did define me. Meanwhile, Evan was doing everything he could to win me back. He sent flowers to Alyssa's house, showed up with handwritten letters, as if that was going to change anything. He even enlisted some of our mutual friends to try and talk me into giving him another chance. They told me he was really sorry, and that he had realized he'd made a huge mistake. Some even said things like, well, every marriage has its rough patches, and you've been together for so long, maybe you should consider counseling. But honestly, how many more chances was I supposed to give him? He didn't slip up once. He deliberately carried on an affair for 8 months, lying to my face every day. No amount of flowers or apologies could fix that. I stayed firm in my decision to move forward with the divorce, even though his attempts at reconciliation were getting more desperate. He showed up at Alyssa's house one night, drunk, banging on the door, demanding to see me. That was the moment I realized things were only going to get worse. I knew I had to stay strong, but it wasn't easy with him pulling these stunts. Some days I even wondered if it would just be simpler to let him talk, to give in, if only to get some peace. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the way he made me feel like I wasn't enough, and every time I stayed firm. Update 2. As the divorce dragged on, Evan's behavior started getting more and more erratic. It was almost like he couldn't accept that I was serious about leaving him. One night, after I had gone on a date, nothing serious, just trying to put myself out there, I noticed a familiar car parked down the street from Alyssa's house. It was Evan. He was sitting there, just watching the house. I was creeped out but tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he was just passing by. But then it happened again and again. He wasn't doing anything overtly threatening, but the fact that he was following me made me feel uneasy. I didn't want to involve the police just yet, but I was starting to think that might be my next step. Every time I went out, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder, wondering if he was watching. It was exhausting, emotionally and mentally. I told Alyssa, and she was furious, but I just didn't know how to handle it at that point. The drunk dials were another fun addition to my life. Around midnight, like clockwork, my phone would start ringing. I had blocked him, but he found ways to call from different numbers, burner phones, maybe? I'm not sure. Each call was the same. Him slurring through some apology or begging me to give him another chance. I never answered, and eventually, I just turned my phone off at night to get some peace. But it was clear to me that he wasn't letting go. Then came the threats, not outright violent threats, but the kind of subtle ones that made you wonder if you were in actual danger. He'd leave voicemails saying things like, "If you keep this up, people are going to know things you don't want them to," or, "I wouldn't want your little secrets to come out." What secrets? I've got nothing to hide, but the fact that he was even going there made me realize how unhinged he had become. I was furious that he thought he could manipulate me with fear, but more than that, I was just exhausted. Evan's parents got involved, too, which made things even messier. His mom called me one evening trying to play the role of peacemaker. She said Evan was broken and that I should consider giving him another chance. She talked about how every marriage goes through hard times and that this affair didn't mean he didn't love me. She even had the nerve to suggest that maybe I hadn't been meeting his needs, which could have led him to seek comfort elsewhere, as if his cheating was somehow my fault. I shut that down immediately. I told her that no matter what issues we had in the marriage, nothing justified what he did. She kept pressing, though, saying things like, "You've invested so much time into this marriage. Are you sure you want to throw it all away?" It wasn't lost on me that they were more concerned about their son's reputation and their family image than they were about my well-being. Then they started offering financial incentives for me to withdraw the divorce petition. Yes, you heard that right. They offered to take care of me if I agreed to stay with Evan. They said they'd buy me a new car, pay off any of my debts, which were mostly related to supporting Evan's business, by the way, and even hinted at a substantial gift that could set me up for life. Basically, they were trying to buy my silence and loyalty. My family, on the other hand, was having none of it. Alyssa told them off when they showed up at her house one day, trying to talk to me in person. My parents were livid, too, especially after hearing about Evan's creepy stalking behavior and the way his family was trying to manipulate me. They made it clear that they supported my decision 100% and that I should cut ties with him completely, no matter what. But one day, Evan crashed a family event. We were celebrating my cousin's birthday, just a small, low-key gathering at my parents' house, and Evan showed up uninvited. I still don't know how he found out where I was, but there he was, standing at the door like some lost puppy. He was holding a bouquet of flowers and a giant balloon that said, "I'm sorry," like that was supposed to fix everything. My dad answered the door, and when he saw Evan, he nearly lost it. He told him to leave immediately, but Evan refused. He insisted on talking to me, saying he needed just 5 minutes to explain himself. By this point, The whole family had gathered around, and I could see the embarrassment on Evan's face, but he wasn't embarrassed for the right reasons. He was embarrassed because he knew he was losing control of the narrative. He made this grand public gesture, getting down on one knee and begging me to forgive him. It was straight out of a bad rom-com, except instead of being endearing, it was just pathetic. He went on about how much he loved me, how he couldn't live without me, and how he'd do anything to win me back. But the more he talked, the more ridiculous it became. My cousin actually started laughing because the whole scene was just so over the top. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, while my dad told him again to leave. Finally, Alyssa stepped in and told Evan to either leave or she'd call the cops. That got him to back off, but not before he threw the flowers on the ground in some dramatic tantrum. Watching him storm off like a child only strengthened my resolve. There was no way I was ever going back to him. After that disaster, my lawyer suggested that I seriously consider filing for a restraining order. At first, I wasn't sure if it was necessary. I mean, Evan hadn't been violent, just pathetic and stalkerish. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that his behavior was escalating. He was trying to wear me down, to make me feel like I couldn't escape him, and if I didn't put up some boundaries now, who knew what he might try next? The divorce proceedings became more contentious, especially after the family event. Evan's lawyer started playing dirty, trying to drag out the process even more, but I wasn't going to give up. Meanwhile, Evan's company continued to suffer. His distraction with the divorce and the public knowledge of the affair was taking its toll. Investors were pulling out, especially after Dana got fired. Evan's golden boy image was officially tarnished, and it was only a matter of time before the whole thing came crumbling down. Update 3. One day, out of the blue, Evan's sister reached out to me. She's one of the few people in his family who never tried to guilt or pressure me into staying with him, and honestly, I've always respected her for that. She told me she was worried about Evan. His drinking had gotten worse, and he was becoming more unstable. Apparently, he'd started missing important meetings at his company and was on the verge of losing everything. His parents were concerned too, but they didn't know how to help. She asked if I would meet with him just once for closure, because she was afraid that he was going to do something even more reckless if I didn't. I needed to get him to accept that our marriage was over. Plus, I figured if things went south, at least it would all be on the record with my lawyer. I agreed to meet him, but only in a public place and only if Alyssa came with me. There was no way I was going to face him alone after everything that had happened. We agreed to meet at a mall in town. I picked the location because it was in a busy area, and I knew there would be plenty of people around if things got weird. Alyssa came with me for support, though she stayed in the background while I spoke to Evan. The moment I walked in and saw him sitting at a corner table, he looked terrible. He had lost weight, his hair was unkempt, and he had dark circles under his eyes. For a split second, I felt sorry for him, but then I reminded myself that this was all a result of his own actions. He was paying the price for what he did to me and to himself. When I sat down, the first thing he did was apologize again, but this time it felt different. He wasn't putting on a show like he had at the family event. He seemed genuinely broken. He begged for another chance, said that he had made the biggest mistake of his life, and that he didn't realize what he was losing until it was too late. He cried, like full-on sobbing in the middle of the mall. People were starting to stare, but I kept my composure. I had already seen this act before. Maybe the tears were real this time, but I wasn't moved by them. It was too late for that. I calmly told him that reconciliation was impossible. I explained that trust, once broken, couldn't be easily repaired, and in our case it wasn't just broken, it was obliterated. I told him I wasn't the same person anymore, and frankly, I didn't want to be with someone who had shown me so little respect and love. He didn't take it well. His desperation turned into anger. He accused me of being heartless, of throwing away everything we'd built together. He said I was overreacting and that people make mistakes all the time. He even had the nerve to say that maybe this was partly my fault because I hadn't been as attentive in the last year. That's when Alyssa stepped in. Alyssa, who had been quietly watching from a nearby table, stormed over and cut him off mid-sentence. She didn't yell, but she told him that I didn't owe him anything. Not another chance, not forgiveness, and definitely not a conversation where he could blame me for his mistakes. She reminded him that he was the one who cheated, he was the one who lied, and he was the one who lost everything because of his own choices. Evan broke down. He started crying again. But this time it wasn't the same performative sobbing as before. This was the kind of crying that comes from realizing that you've truly lost everything. He said he didn't know how to live without me, that he had taken me for granted, and that he hated himself for what he had done. He admitted that his affair with Dana wasn't even about love. It was about ego. He liked the attention, the excitement, the thrill of having someone younger fawn over him. He said he thought he could have both me at home and his fling on the side. But now, standing in front of me, he realized how wrong he was. For the first time in this whole ordeal, it felt like Evan was actually taking responsibility for his actions. But even then, it didn't change anything for me. His apology, while genuine, didn't erase the pain or the betrayal. It was too little, too late. I told him that I accepted his apology. But that didn't mean I was going to change my mind. I made it clear that we were done, and there was no going back. I was moving on with my life, and he needed to do the same. Alyssa and I walked out, and as we left, I saw him still sitting there, head in his hands, completely broken. After that, I blocked his number for good. I deleted all traces of him from my social media and changed my phone number. I didn't want any chance of him contacting me again. I was done. Update 4. After our last meeting, Evan finally stopped contesting the divorce. I think that mall conversation broke him in a way nothing else could. He finally realized that no amount of apologies or promises would fix what he destroyed. My lawyer and I were able to negotiate a fair settlement fairly quickly after that. In the end, I got what I deserved, no more, no less. I made sure that I wasn't being taken advantage of, but I also didn't want to drag things out unnecessarily. His company had been struggling ever since the affair became public knowledge. He ended up selling a large portion of it just to keep things afloat, and while he's still working there in some capacity, it's clear his reputation took a major hit. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he's no longer the golden boy of the tech world that he used to be. Karma, I guess. The divorce was finalized about 6 months ago. We signed the papers in separate rooms, and when I left the lawyer's office, it felt like the weight of the world had finally been lifted off my shoulders. It was done. 3 years of marriage and 5 years of my life officially over on paper. Walking out of that office after the divorce was finalized, I took some time for myself. I started traveling a bit, visiting places I had always wanted to see but never had the chance to because Evan had been too busy or uninterested. But life has a funny way of moving forward when you're not even paying attention. A few months after the divorce, I met someone. His name is David, fake name, and he's the complete opposite of Evan. He's kind, supportive, and more importantly, trustworthy. We met through mutual friends at a small gathering, and things just clicked. At first, I was hesitant to jump into anything serious after everything I'd been through, but David was patient with me. He understood my hesitation and let me take things at my own pace. What surprised me the most about being with David was how easy it felt. There were no mind games, no hidden agendas. Just two people enjoying each other's company and building something real. He didn't care about my past, didn't judge me for what had happened with Evan. He was just happy to be with me for who I am, and that was a refreshing change. As for Evan, well, I've heard bits and pieces about him from mutual acquaintances, but we haven't spoken since the day we finalized the divorce. Last I heard, he's still focused on his company, trying to rebuild his reputation. He's not in a relationship as far as I know, and I doubt he'll be jumping into anything serious anytime soon. Maybe he's taking time to reflect, or maybe he's still chasing his old habits. I don't really care at this point. There was a part of me that used to wonder how he was doing, especially in the months right after the divorce. I catch myself thinking about what he was going through, if he regretted everything, if he missed me. But those thoughts are long gone now. He's just a part of my past, a lesson in what I will never tolerate again. I don't feel anger toward him anymore. I just feel nothing. And honestly, that's the best feeling in the world. Now I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to build a life with David and to continue growing into the person I was always meant to be. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that happiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you create for yourself. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Ex-husband's GF wanted my late MAL's jewelry meant for our daughter. She kept asking to borrow it. I, 40F, and my ex, we'll call him Joe, 41M, were high school sweethearts, started dating when we were 17, married at 19, and divorced 20 years later, so going on 2 years now. We have an amazing daughter, Sarah, who is 8 and has adjusted really well to the separation. Joe and I get along great. The divorce was amicable and we're still good friends. Not like we hang out alone or anything, but we don't argue or fuss at each other, help each other out, and just overall have each other's backs because, at the end of the day, our number one priority will always be Sarah and doing what is best for her. We've both moved on and are in serious, long-term relationships with other people. His girlfriend, Lily, 46F, is great and really good for him. I have never had any conflict with her and enjoy spending time with her when we all get together for holidays and other important events or celebrations. Until last week. Joe's parents passed away within a month of each other last summer, and it was devastating for all of us. Even though Joe and I had already been divorced for about a year, they still treated me like family, and I loved them dearly. Joe and Lily hadn't started dating yet, so she never met them, which is a shame. They were incredible people. Long story to get to the point, but I feel like the background is important. Last week, Sarah got a box in the mail from her aunt, who was responsible for dividing up my late mother-in-law's jewelry amongst the kids and grandkids. She had a huge collection of both costume and more expensive fine jewelry. I let Joe know about it, and he explained that some of it was left to me. So when he would come over and we sort through it together, Lily came with him, which was fine. It was extremely difficult, and we were both very emotional. So I'm glad she was there to support him. Here's where I think I may be the a-hole. As we were going through the jewelry, we had pulled out a couple of cheaper pieces of costume jewelry for Sarah to have now, and I picked out a couple of rings, a necklace, and 3 pairs of earrings to keep, knowing that they will eventually go to Sarah as well. Joe and I agreed that the rest of it would be put away in the lockbox that we each have a key to at my house and would stay there until Sarah is older and it goes to her. One of the pieces being put away is a beautiful set of ruby and diamond earrings and necklace that are obviously very real, and we believe were passed down from Joe's grandmother. Lily had been admiring the set and making comments about how well it would go with the wedding dress she had been looking at. They aren't engaged, or even with some of her date night outfits. Joe didn't say anything to her in response, and when she put them down, I wrapped them back up and put them along with the rest of the jewelry in the lockbox. Since then, Lily has texted me multiple times asking about them and if she can just borrow them. At one point, she accused me of just wanting them for myself and pointed out that Joe and I were divorced and I didn't have any right to keep them. She has also said that when they get married, the jewelry will legally be part of their marital assets anyway, so I'm just putting off the inevitable. I'm not planning on wearing them. Per my agreement with Joe, I'll wear the pieces I picked out, and the rest will stay put away for Sarah. I have zero intention of taking any of it out unless it's necessary, and even then, I'll let Joe know what's going on with it. Joe has been radio silent, and I haven't said anything because I don't want to cause any conflict that could have an impact on Sarah. So, am I the a-hole for not giving in and letting Lily have some of the jewelry meant for my daughter? Relevant comments that OP answered. Comment 1. She is a pushy thing, isn't she? It is a big red flag, and I hope your ex sees it as such. The greed is really disgusting. OP. It's just so bizarre that this is happening now. She's been amazing since they started dating and has been great at taking things slowly with Sarah and building a relationship with both her and I. It's been nothing but green flags up to now, and I was so happy that he found someone that seems so good for him and that makes him so happy. I don't want to cause issues between them, but this is definitely concerning, and if it's her true colors showing, she isn't someone I want around my daughter. Comment 2. It might be telling that Joe has been radio silent regarding this back and forth with Lily. He may just not want to get involved in it or knows that the jewelry was willed to Sarah. The fact that Lily said it would be great to wear at her wedding and will be marital assets when she and Joe get married is delusional. She and Joe aren't even engaged unless I miss something in the story. Doesn't all the jewelry legally belong to Sarah? Opie, I know they've talked about marriage, but there hasn't been any kind of proposal or anything beyond that. Prior to this happening, I was thrilled over the idea of them getting married. Lily has been great for my ex and for Sarah up until now. I'm pretty upset that she may be showing her true colors now, and I hope that's not the case. The jewelry was left to Sarah, with a notation that I could choose what I wanted from it because MIL had specified that I could choose anything I wanted as long as they will eventually end up with Sarah. There's zero possibility of it not going to her, either when I pass or before if she wants it when she's older. She's my only child and will eventually inherit all of my assets. OP on if Joe and Lily are engaged, married or neither. No, not engaged. Marriage has been discussed between them, but that's as far as it's gone. I was excited about the prospect until all of this. I'm glad it's not just me being weird about this. It's not like she was asking about a piece of costume jewelry that doesn't have quite as much sentimental value, but about family heirloom pieces that have been passed down. Sarah is too young right now to really appreciate all of that, but she had a very good relationship with her grandmother even after the divorce. We FaceTimed weekly, and I know how much it will mean to her to have when she's older. OP on who has legal rights to the jewelry and how does OP and Joe's roles play in this when the jewelry is placed in the safe. The jewelry was left to Sarah and I. I was allowed to pick what I wanted from what was sent because there's no question that it will be left to Sarah when I pass or given to her before then once she's older. I don't have any other kids or stepkids, so Sarah will inherit all of my assets in the future, including the pieces that MIL left to me. Since it was his mom's, I felt like it was right for him to be there when I sorted through it. If there had been anything that he wanted to keep with him, I wouldn't have objected at all because while my MIL and I were close, and it does belong to Sarah now, that was his mom. He and his parents had an amazing relationship, and I would never have said he couldn't have something of hers as long as we stuck to the agreement that everything eventually goes to Sarah, since that's who it's all intended to go to. I was trying to do the right thing since we are still friends, and I know how hard it was for him to lose his parents. At the time, I was genuinely thankful that Lily was there for emotional support because it was so hard to see pieces that my ML wore frequently and treasured. It was just that punch in the gut reminder that she's gone and how much she's missed. When his dad passed, Joe and his brother inherited a very large collection of firearms with instructions to divide it up amongst their other siblings and the grandchildren as they saw fit. FIL and I were close, although not as close as MIL and I were. So when the time came, Joe asked me to pick out something from his share of the collection to keep as a reminder of his dad, and with the understanding that it will eventually be given to Sarah. I need to call the aunt that sent the jewelry and confirm, but I suspect it was a similar setup. The jewelry was left to the girls to be divided up and distributed as they saw fit. Joe was told that it was being sent to Sarah and I, but there was no mention of any of the jewelry being set aside for him or his brother specifically. Update: August 21st, 2024. So many of you asked for an update, so here it is really quick. I wrote this out yesterday and figured out that it was probably better to make a new post than edit the other one with it. So yeah, here's what's going on. Joe took an extended lunch yesterday and came by the house without Lily. I explained to him why I was reluctant to bring everything up, but I was tired of being harassed about the jewelry, and that I feel strongly about it belonging to Sarah, not to either of us and certainly not to Lily. He agreed immediately and was shocked to find out that she had been asking about it and then angry when I showed him the messages. I figured the best course of action was a face-to-face conversation with him and being able to hand him my phone so he could see the conversation for himself, and there would be no way for her to accuse me of making it up or photoshopping anything. It sucks to see him so upset over it, and I have a feeling that it's going to get worse because from what he was saying, it sounds like Lily won't be around much longer. Regardless, she won't be allowed back in my home and won't be spending any time with Sarah alone if he doesn't break up with her. I did also go first thing yesterday morning and open a safe deposit box at one of the local banks. It's not the one I normally do business with, and as of right now, my name is the only one on it and I have the only key. I was worried about the possibility of Lily having any kind of access to the jewelry with it being in the house, and until all of that is resolved, I feel better knowing that there's no way for her to get to it. Joe and I also discussed this when he came over, and he said that he agrees completely that it's the best course of action to safeguard Sarah's inheritance. All but one of the pieces I picked out also went in, and as much as I would love to have a couple of the other pieces to wear in remembrance of her on the really hard days, I would rather know it's safe, and I still have the one piece that brings me so much comfort. All kinds of notarized documents will be on their way to me, and should be here by the end of the week when I have a meeting set up with a lawyer to determine what else needs to be done to ensure that the jewelry will go to Sarah without any issues or challenges. I spoke to the aunt that sent everything over the weekend after I posted this and got so much good advice, thank you all, and requested she send copies of everything pertaining to it along with documentation from her as the executor of what was sent to who, etc. I didn't tell her about the issues with Lily. I don't think that's my place, and I'll let Joe deal with telling his family or not as he sees fit. I have an appointment later today with a GIA-certified appraiser, so I should be able to take all of that with me to the lawyer as well as the pictures and video that I took of each piece last night. I'm still leaning towards a trust as the best way to make sure Sarah's interests and assets are protected, but we'll see what the lawyer says and go from there. I feel terrible for Joe. He's a great guy, and even though our marriage didn't work out, I still care about him and always will. He's not just my child's father, but also one of my best friends, and I want him to find someone to be with that loves him the way he deserves to be loved. It's just that whoever that is needs to understand that Sarah is always going to come first, and he and I will always work as a team to make sure that she's happy, healthy, and successful in life. Our relationships with each other and other people aren't going to hinder her in any way. Thank you to everyone that commented and offered so much good advice and support. I really do appreciate all of it more than I can tell you. I didn't expect this to blow up the way it did, and it's really overwhelming, to be honest. I probably won't update any more or add anything else to this. So thank you again. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Mom chose my stepdad over me and put me in foster care. Years later, my brothers found me, and one of them remembered watching my stepdad force me to eat from a dog bowl. I really need an outside perspective on whether I'd be the a-hole in this situation. 21-year-old male. I ended up in foster care at 9 years old because of the abuse I suffered at the hands of my stepfather, a man my mom kept choosing over me, despite all the support and interventions that were supposed to protect me. My mom refused to kick him out even after she had a restraining order against him. She still let him back into our lives. Meanwhile, she went on to have 2 more children with this man. My half-brothers, who are now 19, Richie, and 16, James. It got to the point where it was obvious that no matter what, she would keep letting him back into our lives and allowing me to be a scapegoat of anything that was wrong in life, and I ended up being removed. After I was removed from the home, my mom was allowed to keep and raise my brothers as if nothing had happened. From what I know, my stepdad never laid a hand on them. My mom and this man are still together. I know because I've checked her Facebook more times than I'd like to admit. Growing up, it was devastating to realize that my mom would rather give me up than fight for me. She could have kept me if she just left him, but she didn't. This abandonment left me with deep scars and a lot of issues to deal with as I grew up. It didn't help that she cut off all contact with me almost as soon as I was placed in foster care. She wouldn't even show up for court-ordered visits. Foster care was also really rough for me. I bounced around 3 different families, and it wasn't until the last one that I got any therapy to help me make sense of what had happened. A few days ago, out of nowhere, I got a Facebook message from my Richie and James. They said they've been thinking about me a lot and want to get to know me. They even mentioned that our mom talks about me sometimes and wonders how I'm doing. They said they'd like to start some kind of relationship if I'm open to it, and Richie said he would be willing to drive him and James to come and visit me wherever I am in the country. They both seemed nice in this message, and I don't have an issue with either of them. At first, I was going to ignore the message because I don't want anything to do with my biological family, but then a darker thought crossed my mind. This could be my one and only chance to expose my stepdad for the monster he truly is. I could finally tell my half-brothers everything he did to me, everything he put me through, and let the truth come crashing down on them. I know that if I do this, it'll probably destroy any chance of having a relationship with them, but honestly, I'm not sure I want one anyway. I told my friend that I was thinking about doing this, and he said it's a really bad idea that won't accomplish anything I wanted to. He said it will most likely just cause them to think I'm bitter and mean and won't make them have any issues with their dad. But while I know it would be a difficult thing to process, I would want to know if my dad was like that. I would want to know the truth about how my dad treated other children. I don't know how much they know about why I was removed into care, so would I be the a-hole if I went through with it? Update 1. Hey everyone. I wanted to come back and give you all an update. First off, Thanks for all the advice and different perspectives. I really needed to hear them. So, after thinking a lot about what everyone said and after having a session with my therapist, I realized that my initial plan to tell my brothers everything about my stepdad wasn't really about helping them. It was more about me still holding on to the anger and hurt from my past, and that's not fair to them. A lot of you pointed out that they probably don't know the full story and are innocent in all this, and honestly, that hit hard. I decided to reach out to my brother, Richie, and told him I'd like to meet up. I didn't mention anything about our mom or the stepdad situation. I figured if we were going to start a relationship, it's better to take things slow and not dump all that heavy stuff on them right away. We ended up meeting at a cafe. I was super nervous, but when I saw them, it actually felt nice. They were both really nice, and we just talked about normal stuff like what we've been up to, our favorite football teams, that sort of thing. It was weirdly easy to chat with them. At one point, James asked why I was placed in foster care. That caught me off guard, but I decided to keep it vague and just said that things were complicated at home back then and that going into care was what was best for me at the time. James started pushing a bit for more details, but Richie told him to knock it off, which honestly was a relief. By the end of it, I was glad I went. They asked if we could stay in touch, and I said yes. I'm still figuring out how much to share about what happened, but for now, I'm just trying to focus on building a relationship with them. I realize that while the past is important, it doesn't have to dictate how things go with them now. So yeah, thanks again to everyone who helped me see things clearer. I'm feeling a lot more hopeful about this, and I'm really glad I didn't just go with my gut reaction to tell them everything right off the bat. We'll see where things go from here, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Update 2. Before anything, I read a lot of your comments. So many were saying I was selfish for wanting to expose my stepdad, and then so many were saying I was a coward for not. Some people were saying I was allowing the abuser to get away with it by not telling my brothers. I had DMs calling me an abuse apologist, people calling me a liar for not answering the question James asked when we first met. I never said I wasn't ever going to talk to them about my past. Literally in my last post, I said I was still working on sharing my past in a healthy way with help from my therapist, and yet I had people acting like they knew best and that I should just tell them both right away. So many people arguing about it one way or the other. It does seem like everything I do, there will be issues. I will upset someone. I know that, and I am trying to navigate this in my own way, so please be respectful of that, even if you would have done it a different way. I am in no way letting SD get away with the abuse. I tried everything I could as a child/teen to get him prosecuted. I have accepted that that will never happen. Just know I am a real person who reads the comments. Not everything I do is perfect, but please just be kind. I don't say this to stop people from giving me advice. I love advice, just be positive and kind. I don't need more negativity. Anyway, in the week since my last post, I have met up with my brothers 3 more times. Once with both, and 2 times it has been just me and Richie. There seems to have been an instant bond between us, something that I didn't even know I wanted. I am loving hanging out with them, which is amazing because I didn't even think I ever wanted to see any of my family again. Never mind start to develop a good relationship with some of them. When I last met up with Richie alone, we went to go see a movie and then get something to eat. We spoke about our plans and what he does now, and we got talking about me and foster care. I asked him what he had been told about me growing up. He said they haven't been told much, but that mom sometimes talks about me. I asked him what he remembered of me and why I was taken into care. He said he has some memories, fuzzy memories and clear memories, but he said he didn't know for certain what happened. He said he remembered a lot of fighting and arguing between me and SD. He said he had one very clear memory of me, but said he didn't know whether it was appropriate for him to share it or not. He asked me what I remembered, and I said it was difficult for me to talk about with people. He said he understood if I didn't want to get into it. I asked him what his clear memory was. He remembered me being about 8 years old, my SD stripping me naked and putting me in a dog's collar and making me eat dog food. He said he remembered his dad hitting me with his belt as I was eating out the dog bowl and crying. This actually happened many times for me growing up, but he said he only remembered it once. I started crying, and he apologized for bringing it up, and I said, "Don't." I was glad he at least remembered some things of my abuse. He said he guessed that the abuse by SD was the reason I was taken away. I said, "Yeah, I asked if SD ever abused either of them, and he said he hadn't, never. But he said he wasn't close to either my mom or his dad. He said they weren't ever amazingly loving people, but never abused them. He said he was sorry again. We spoke some more about our childhood. I felt safer talking about the abuse since he already remembered some of it. We spoke a bit more about it. I tried answering questions he had, and he answered some of mine. He asked if the trauma still impacts me now, and I said, yeah. I was open with him that I've attempted to end my own life multiple times because of it. He apologized for not being there for me, for not sticking up for me. I said nothing that happened was his fault or my fault, and that we can't change the past. After we finished, we both went to our own homes. He messaged me saying he's glad I grew up and that I managed to keep living. He meant it sweetly, I think, even though it came off a little weird. I feel really amazing that I have a brother who seems to care about me. I couldn't even have imagined he would have liked me a few weeks ago. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Wife's real estate job led to wild parties and late nights. I later found out flirty texts with other men on her phone. My wife, F35, and I am 40, have been married for 10 years, and we really do have an amazing relationship. We have 2 beautiful kids, a nice home, I own my own business, and things are great. We have a great sex life and social life outside of our family life with kids. My wife, after years in various parts of the industry, got her real estate license about 4 years ago. It was something to fill time, keep busy, and make a little extra income. The company that she's been with for the last 2 or 3 years has a real emphasis on social networking events, and it has caused a rift between us. I have attended 1 or 2 of these events, and I've left them all with a troubling feeling. I would say 9 out of the 10 people I met rubbed me the wrong way. Many of them are very self-absorbed, could only talk about themselves and their success, and are very flirtatious with my wife. To be fair, she is incredibly attractive, but approachable and friendly. The last few events that my wife has attended resulted in her coming home late and involved excessive drinking. There are 2 things that really bother me about it. I feel that her professional relationships with men at her company have become more social than professional, and these networking events seem more like an excuse to go and hang out with other guys and drink. While many of them are married, I don't trust their intentions. Last week, my wife attended an event, and we agreed she would be back by 12. I even went out of my way to make a point of asking her to be responsible and to limit the amount that she drinks. Well, 2 a.m. rolled around, and there was no sign of her. She wouldn't respond to text messages. I could see she was still in the general area of the event, which was over an hour from our house. Finally, after calling a few times, she answered. I could tell she was extremely drunk. She told me she was staying at a hotel with one of her girlfriends, and I had to quickly remind her that I had to be up at 4:30 a.m. to get ready for work. Long story short, she took an Uber to the train and ended up driving her car home drunk. As if this wasn't bad enough, I noticed on her phone she had very flirtatious text messages with multiple married and single men. I've really had enough of this career choice. She doesn't seem responsible enough to attend these events, and it is causing a big divide between the 2 of us. I'm really at a loss for what my next step should be. There was a similar situation to this a few months ago, and at that point she had promised me she was going to control herself and be more responsible, but it's pretty obvious she is not able to do that. Update. August 15, 2024. Hi, everyone. I received many requests for an update on our situation. I also want to thank all of the people that had positive and empathetic responses to my initial story. A lot has unfolded in the time since my wife's night out. After noticing the flirtatious text messages, I asked my wife to see her phone. I told her I wanted to see what else she had written. She gave me access to her phone, and upon doing a deeper dive, I saw that the flirtatious messages went far beyond anything I would have expected. The man she was messaging had recently broken up with his girlfriend, and my wife's response to him was that things aren't going well in our marriage. I also found out that while we were on vacation in the area he lives, she went to the gym and met this man there to work out. This news was devastating to me. Not only was I disgusted to find out that she met with him behind my back, but I was blindsided to see she mentioned to him we were probably heading towards divorce. We had a difficult week after that. She was ashamed of her actions. The drinking, the messages to this man, and the meetup. She described that she feels like I hate her, which really hurt because I feel like I do everything I can to make her happy. She swore to me that nothing physical had happened. After looking through the messages, I do believe her. It seems that she didn't find out that he and his girlfriend broke up until he texted her after the gym. He actually stated in the messages that while he is attracted to her, he didn't want to get in the way of our marriage, and that he didn't want to be a distraction while she and I tried to work things out. I have to commend him for that. I told her that it was imperative that she confesses if anything physical had happened. I was willing to work through anything, but if I find out later down the road that she lied, then she would not get another chance. I also discussed the importance, if anything happened, for the sake of our health and our children's health, that she would need to go get tested. She was also on her period while we were away, so I'm confident there was no physical interaction. She has been adamant that nothing happened, but she knows what she did was wrong. She did agree to get tested to give me peace of mind, and everything was negative. I had a few sessions with my therapist, and she recommended a couples therapist for us. She also mentioned that she believes my wife has some deeper trauma that she needs to work through. It's obvious that her judgment is off, and that there may be some reason as to why she is acting out. Our first session with the couples therapist was very educational. She did a dive into our relationship from the beginning, the main reason that we sought out her help, and laid out a treatment plan. Next week, we will be starting individual sessions with her, and then couple sessions following that. We both know that there is a lot of work to do, but we are dedicated to making this work. I myself had a very unstable childhood due to my parents' divorce. When I made those vows to my wife, I fully intended to see them through, and I believe she did as well. I feel very confident after speaking to both therapists that couples can heal, move beyond an act of infidelity, and can come out even stronger than before. I owe it to myself, my wife, and my children to do everything I can to commit to having a happy and healthy relationship. My wife is showing great remorse. She said she doesn't know why she does these things, but she knows it's wrong and she wants to stop. She is seeking the necessary help and knows she has a lot of work to do. She's fully aware of the damage she has caused. She knows I've lost the ability to trust her in social settings, and it's going to take a long time to earn that back. She has since ended any and all conversations with this guy. She has offered to quit her job. I'm not sure if that's going to help. I believe she does get a sense of purpose from it that she doesn't get at home. If she can't control herself at these work events, then I can't trust her to control herself anywhere. She had plans to go away for the yearly work retreat/national meeting later in the year. She has made the decision to cancel those plans. Relevant comments that OP answered. Comment 1. She's doing the right things on paper, but man, she met with another man with the intent to cheat. But it seems like it didn't happen only because the other guy has a conscience. She fed him the "I'm getting divorced" lies so he would sleep with her. Yikes, I would find this hard to overcome. Find this guy and buy him a beer. She shouldn't stop working, but maybe she finds a job at another office to get away from the party culture of her current job. The outings after work and work trip should stop until further notice. She broke the trust and it's going to take years to fix. Any mention of her going to AA meetings? She shouldn't have a drop of alcohol either. Opie, thank you. We are going to dive into the alcohol issue with the therapist. It's something my therapist recommended, but when I brought it up to my wife, she was insulted that I said she has a drinking problem. My therapist said she's not ready to hear that from me and needs to deal with that professionally. As I mentioned in the first post, she doesn't drink very often, and more often than not, she can have 1 or 2 drinks and call it quits. There is no excuse for the binge drinking, and I do believe she has a problem, so I'm taking it very seriously. Comment 2. I'm glad you are trying to work it out. The only thing I find long-term concerning in all this is that she said during an emotional affair that you two were heading towards divorce. That means she was planning for it until she got caught. I hope you all are able to make it through all this for the sake of you both and your kids. Opie, thank you. That was without question the most devastating part of the whole situation for me. Not that the other things weren't bad, but to hear she felt so differently about our marriage than I did really hurt. She has told me that she doesn't want a divorce. She doesn't know why she said that, She reached out to this other guy the next day over the phone to tell him that it was wrong of her to say that and it wasn't true. But we are working towards making sure we are not heading in that direction. Comment 3. So many marriages end up in shambles because the couple tried to stay together for the sake of the children. It just doesn't work, dude. There are countless examples of this. Opie. And there are people who make an effort to correct course and have a successful and healthy marriage. What we have is worth fighting for, and if it doesn't work and if there are other events that impact our marriage, then I can at least say I tried and I can move on. Even if we called it quits right after something like this, how could we possibly have an amicable divorce and healthy co-parenting situation for our kids? Comment 4. Plenty of parents do. Opie. I think it's more important to try to fix it. Do you want to be the person that had a successful divorce? Successful marriage? If something else happens, then there is nothing more lost than if I walk away now. My mom suffered from a drinking problem after a failed marriage and vicious divorce. Her fiancé walked out on her because he didn't want to deal with it, so it was up to me to take on that responsibility in my early 20s. She's since been sober and healthy. It troubles me to think what would have come if he took steps to stand by her and get her the help she needed. I could have walked away from her and said, "Good luck. We have reached the end." If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.